Summoning the Ancients allows a master to call forth mighty beasts from 4,000 years ago. Here in the territory of Tenma, that supposedly worthless ability first awakened within Diljuk. Yet through this forgotten power, Diljuk can resurrect a lost empire as a massive purple dragon soars overhead. Arriving in the royal capital of Gethel, Diljuk froze in utter shock and dread at the sight before him. An official decree ordered Diljuk Rebello banished to the frontier of Tenma, leaving him dropping his belongings in disbelief, rushing to the castle gates for answers. Diljuk found his path firmly barred by palace sentries, carrying direct royal orders to forbid his entry. Even the guard admitted Diljuk had been King Gutter's most loyal advisor, utterly baffled why such a trusted aide was cast out without cause. Everyone knew Diljuk's brilliant economic policies had enriched the entire realm, making the king's sudden betrayal reek of a foul court conspiracy. Born into the noble house of Rebello, Diljuk gained the bizarre art of summoning ancients, whereas his brothers inherited mighty martial abilities. Countless training sessions failed to awaken his dormant magic, yet instead of giving up, Diljuk redoubled his efforts and threw himself into rigorous study. Passing the imperial exams with top marks, he earned a place in the palace entourage as King Gutter's advisor, serving the throne with loyalty. Devoting his life to his people brought immense fulfillment, making this cruel twist of fate a devastating blow nobody could have ever anticipated. Snapping out of his grim thoughts, Diljuk turned around to face an arrogant newcomer, his expression instantly hardening for an imminent confrontation. Octo Higgins sneered with open malice, mocking Diljak's stunned face and ridiculing his useless ancient summoning skill with sheer contempt. Grabbing Diljuk by the collar, Octo Higgins hissed with venomous jealousy, infuriated that a lesser noble was valued over him as the king's trusted aide. The arrogant blonde gloated over the king's swift banishment, prompting Diljuk to decipher his sinister words. Realizing that Octo had orchestrated the entire exile, Diljuk felt a surge of unbridled fury ignite deep in his chest. Octo claimed he was merely doing his royal duty, falsely accusing Diljuk of trying to usurp the kingdom in a cunning, fabricated scheme. Grinning wickedly, the noble declared the exile a merciful punishment, noting the monarch could have executed him on the spot. Ordering Diljuk to get lost, Octo strutted away in triumph, leaving the exiled noble cast aside on the cobblestones outside the gates, though Diljuk urged him to serve the kingdom selflessly. Octo sneered back, instructing him to preach those ideals to the peasants in his backwater post, deemed useless because of his unproven skill. Diljuk had still dedicated every waking hour to improving the lives of ordinary citizens. Riding the carriage toward his remote exile, the coachman's call announcing their arrival in Tenma pulled Diljuk back to reality from his thoughts. Reports indicated Tenma was a lawless borderland inhabited by diverse races where imperial rule held no sway and the prior lord had fled in terror. Apologizing to the driver for the exhausting journey, Diljuk received a reassuring reply that the settlement was just ahead. Reaching their destination, Diljuk declined help with his luggage to inspect his new estate, only to freeze in utter shock at the scenery. Creaking doors and pitch-black windows gave the ruined estate a desolate atmosphere, prompting Diljuk to knock and ask if anyone truly inhabited this place. Announcing himself as the newly appointed lord, Diljuk was greeted by a startled young woman caring for a little girl, stunned to host a noble in her home. When Diljuk inquired about his official manner, the girl strained her memory before finally recalling the long-abandoned residence of the previous ruler. Guiding him to a dilapidated shack devoid of windows, she revealed cracked, gaping walls and loose roof beams that barely held together. Though she apologized for the miserable structure, Diljuk showed no dismay, recognizing that the villagers endured living conditions just as harsh. Explaining that she had to forage in the mountains before nightfall, the girl astonished Diljuk with her resolve to brave such peril in the dark. With barren fields offering no harvest, she had to hunt in the wild to feed her little sister, generously offering to share her meager spoils with him. Accustomed to the abundance of the capital, Diljuk struggled to comprehend how children in this border settlement were left starving in total destitution. Deep inside, he could not fathom how such extreme poverty existed in his kingdom. Refusing to let a young girl risk her life, Diljuk volunteered to enter the perilous mountains in her place, urging her not to worry as he surveyed the perimeter. He asked her to assist the coachman with unloading his luggage. Accepting her heartfelt gratitude, Diljuk offered reassurance and stepped into the dense woods. Treacherous boulders and tangled roots formed a natural labyrinth along the path, forcing Diljuk to watch every single step to avoid tripping. Dense clouds of sinister miasma hung thick in the air, radiating dark magical essence that drew ravenous monsters to the woods. Knowing his unawakened summoning skill was useless, Diljuk relied on his refined swordsmanship and tactical knowledge to stay focused. A blood-curdling scream shattered the dark forest as a colossal monster lunged to butcher an old man and a helpless mother desperately shielding her child. Drawing his blade, Diljuk unleashed the Rebello-style technique of cutting the starry shadow, striking the beast down instantly to rescue the hopeless villagers. The saved villagers stood in awe that a master swordsman had appeared here. Believing he was dreaming, the elder stared in disbelief as Diljuk brushed off their praise, maintaining that defending the weak was every warrior's duty. Watching the fallen creature dissolve into mist, Diljuk noted that its weakness allowed him to eliminate the threat quickly with minimal effort. A deafening roar shook the earth as a monstrous titan tall enough to scrape the sky emerged, prompting Diljuk to scream at the villagers to evacuate immediately. The beast was an A-rank great serpent of colossal proportions, parting its terrifying jaws and preparing to strike with alarming ferocity and destructive force. Paralyzed by sheer terror, the villagers could not run, shielding the child with their bodies and crying out that they had never witnessed such a gigantic serpent, pinning their hopes on him. The villagers watched the serpent lunge forward, its massive impact nearly crushing Diljuk as he barely blocked the blow with his blade. Bracing against the crushing weight, Diljuk recognized that his standard swordplay was utterly powerless against a monstrosity of such overwhelming scale alone. Violent tail sweep proved the serpent's armored scales were virtually impenetrable, forcing Diljuk to devise a new tactical strategy before his guard shattered. Saving the innocent villagers remained his supreme priority, knowing his entire existence as their lord held no meaning if he failed to protect them. Charging the serpent with drawn steel, Diljuk recalled Octo's smug face, determined to prove his worth and confront him again. Above all, Diljuk had to save these people, blocking the massive serpent with raw courage. Diljuk stood firm, knowing that despite having only a useless skill, he had to defend them at all costs. As the serpent's tail slammed down again, Diljuk discovered his ancient summoning skill had finally unlocked, providing a crucial opening to act immediately. Though puzzled by the sudden activation cost requiring stored points during combat, Diljuk recognized this unexpected chance was his only hope. Flicking its long tongue, the serpent crept forward with menacing intent, preparing its final lethal thrust to devour him. With no time left to hesitate, Diljuk tightened his grip on the sword hilt and instantly triggered his ancient summoning power to turn the tide. Catching his breath as thick smoke blanketed the clearing, Diljuk watched the serpent recoil and hiss in terror at an unseen threat. Glancing upward to witness the cause, Diljuk caught glimpses of a colossal entity emerging through the haze. Colossal wings, a massive tail, and a majestic neck filled the sky, radiating an aura so grand that it struck pure dread into the great serpent. Towering so high that Diljuk barely reached its talons, the colossal dragon turned and asked for its master's commands. Awaiting orders, the majestic white dragon gazed at Diljuk and addressed him respectfully by his full name, confirming his role as its true summoner and master. Diljuk marveled at the divine apparition before him, leaving the nearby villagers entirely speechless with awe. Humbled that such a majestic spirit showed deep reverence despite his royal banishment, Diljuk was assured by the dragon that danger had passed. When the dragon assumed his master could easily crush such a petty beast alone, Diljuk confessed he lacked both the strength and magic to do so, reassuring him. The dragon explained that Diljak's summoning ability channels the spirit's own magical reservoir directly into his master's body. Realizing he could now wield draconic fire, Diljuk followed the beast's advice and focused his newly acquired mana into his weapon. Exhaling upon his blade, Diljuk watched the steel ignite into roaring flames, the radiant light reflecting his fierce determination to protect the villagers. Surging with newfound arcane energy, Diljuk prepared to unleash his enhanced power as the great serpent charged in for another ferocious attack. Executing his signature technique of cutting the starry shadow, Diljuk struck true, extinguishing his flaming blade with one decisive motion. Astonished that a single empowered strike felled the gargantuan serpent, Diljuk brought immediate safety and peace to the grateful villagers. Though Diljuk struggled to believe his victory, the smiling dragon assured him it was inevitable, prompting the lord to check on his people. Gazing in sheer reverence, the villagers hailed the master swordsman as a god descending from heaven to deliver them from doom. Seeing the young child reach out with a radiant smile, Diljuk returned the gesture warmly, knowing deep in his heart that his choice to fight was righteous. When asked for his identity, the dragon introduced himself as Hakuryu, proud to serve a noble master whose righteous spirit could transform the world. Amazed that such a formidable dragon obeyed him so willingly, Diljuk reflected on how effortlessly he had channeled draconic fire into his blade. Deducing that the dragon originated from 4 millennia ago, Diljuk was advised by Hakuryu to examine his skill status window to uncover the full truth. Diljuk Rebello recalls that he must check his status. Opening his status window reveals one summon available to call forth legendary beings from 4,000 years ago. Stunned to learn Hakuryu is over 4,000 years old, Diljuk Rebello watches the white dragon rejoice that his long-awaited summoning into this world has arrived. Never did Diljuk Rebello imagine that Hakuryu awaited him, or that spirits of an ancient vanished civilization yearned to walk the world once more. Hakuryu explains that he waited for a master with this skill, revealing that countless other ancient spirits remain eager to be summoned into this realm. Lowering his majestic head, Hakuryu bows before Diljuk Rebello and asks for his guidance in this new era, placing immense responsibility on the young lord. Gazing at Hakuryu in awe, Diljuk Rebello accepts the sacred bond, fully aware that he must still master the ancient magic he unlocked under battlefield duress. Heartened by his ancient summoning power, Diljuk Rebello realizes his ability is extremely extraordinary rather than useless, sparking genuine hope for his new domain. Across the spirit realm, an ancient maiden rejoices that the master destined to become her partner across 4,000 years has finally unlocked the gate. With the great serpent slain, Diljuk Rebello has Hakuryu airlift the rescued villagers towards safety, securing the promised meat from the fallen beast. Villagers offer heartfelt gratitude for the miraculous flight, but Diljuk Rebello insists that Hakuryu carries them across the sky without any strain. The settlers rejoice having a fearless lord ready to defend them from deadly threats, though Diljuk Rebello modestly downplays his battlefield triumph. Admiring his martial prowess, the elder notes that most nobles would flee in panic instead of slaying a rank, a great serpent with a single strike. Eager to spread word of this heroic feat across Tenma, the villager receives Hakuryu's firm backing to ensure their master earns full renown. Flustered by the excessive praise, Diljuk Rebello reflects on his sudden exile to the Tenma borderlands, having awakened ancient magic and saved innocent lives. Diljuk Rebello gives full credit to Hakuryu for lending him dragon strength against the beast, yet Hakuryu reassures him that this divine power belongs to his lord. Checking his status window, Diljuk Rebello discovers accumulated skill points granting another ancient summon, with more spirits unlocked as his tally grows. Pondering the mechanics of his power, Diljuk Rebello realizes vast mysteries remain unsolved regarding how this ancient summoning ability operates and evolves. Knowing only that he can summon spirits from 4,000 years ago, Diljuk Rebello understands that wielding such immense power demands strict care and discipline. Overhearing him, the villagers explain that this era of a vanished civilization holds 0 surviving records, completely erased even from the libraries of Gethel. Learning that this lost age is revered as the legendary era, despite having 0 written records only, fuels Diljuk Rebello's fascination with its secrets. Filled with inspiration, Diljuk Rebello wonders what lost wonders and unfathomable technologies existed back then that modern mankind cannot even imagine. Hakuryu touches down gracefully in Tenma with his passengers, prompting Diljuk Rebello to offer heartfelt gratitude to the sacred dragon for his protection. Closing his eyes, Hakuryu notes that serving his master is an absolute duty, easing Diljuk Rebello's worries that a colossal dragon might terrify the village. Non-human ancient spirits can disguise their forms at will, and once summoned, Hakuryu can materialize instantly at his master's call without any interface, showering him with gratitude. The woman offers to clean the lord's manor, but Diljuk Rebello politely declines and insists on handling his own quarters. Diljuk Rebello urges them to share the meat with the settlement, as the pair prepares roasted serpent tail, praised by Hakuryu as a great delicacy. Bidding the villagers a restful night, Diljuk Rebello breathes a sigh of relief, shuddering to imagine what tragedy would have struck had his skill failed. Stepping inside his dilapidated house, Diljuk Rebello finds only empty barrels, a shattered table, and bare floorboards, making a proper rest look impossible. Compared to the luxury of Gethel, this desolate room is primitive, yet Diljuk Rebello embraces the hardship as the new lord entrusted with Tenma's future. First on his agenda is securing food storage, fresh water, and light. The old lamp is smashed to pieces and the water barrels are ruined. Exiled to the bitter northern frontier, he faces freezing winters without any daily supplies arriving from the capital, facing a mountain of urgent repairs. Diljuk Rebello recognizes that strict time management and methodical planning are essential to rebuild the settlement. Diljuk Rebello remembers that he can perform another summon. Envisioning a burly craftsman, Diljuk Rebello hopes to summon a builder spirit capable of repairing the ruined house. Confident in this plan, Diljuk Rebello opens his status window, confirming that his accumulated experience points easily cover the cost for another summon. Activating his ancient summoning skill, Diljuk Rebello calls across time for a spirit, eager to witness the ritual clearly without the chaos of active battle. Watching the magical circle unfold, Diljuk Rebello marvels that the so-called useless skill he awakened under mortal peril grants command over ancient spirits. Brilliant flash erupts with radiant light as Diljuk Rebello waits with eager anticipation, knowing every ancient summon is an unpredictable gamble. As the blinding glow fades, a young maiden rises gracefully, waking from centuries of slumber. Shrouded in swirling haze and residual sparks from the summoning circle, her silhouette remains obscured until the magical dust settles before Diljuk Rebello. Stepping through the cleared air, she stands proud and announces that she answered her master's summons, confirming Diljuk Rebello called forth a legendary spirit. Performing an elegant curtsy in her charming cloak, she introduces herself as Cindy Keen, delighted to meet her master. Radiating joy, Cindy Keen thanks Diljuk Rebello with a bright smile, having waited millennia just like Hakuryu for the moment her master would call her into the world. Flustered by the encounter, Diljuk Rebello uses her full title, prompting Cindy Keen to pout and playfully plead for a much cuter nickname from her master, quickly apologizing with a bow. Cindy Keen declares that she stands ready to fulfill any task Diljuk Rebello commands of her. Diljuk Rebello hesitates awkwardly, having hoped for a builder to repair the ruined house and feeling improper asking a young maiden to do heavy labor. Touched by his chivalrous concern, Cindy Keen praises Diljuk Rebello as a true gentleman, completely confident in the noble character of her new master. Proudly revealing Revealing her mastery over ancient alchemy, Cindy Keen mentions a forgotten craft unheard of in Diljuk Rebello's modern kingdom. Noting Diljuk Rebello's bewildered expression, Cindy Keen decides to demonstrate her forgotten craft firsthand right before his eyes. Deploying a glowing transmutation circle, Cindy Keen draws raw timber from outside into a swirling vortex of alchemical transformation across the room. Within seconds, polished walls seal tight, the shattered table becomes flawless, and the interior gleams as though newly constructed by royal craftsmen, awaiting his verdict. Cindy Keen smiles as Diljuk Rebello stands speechless at the instant repair, demanding to know what miracle just occurred. Diljuk Rebello receives a giggle from Cindy Keen, who explains she transmuted fallen timber from the yard. When Diljuk Rebello labels alchemy as ancient magic, Cindy Keen blinks in surprise, having considered her craft the peak of advanced future innovation. Cindy Keen reminds Diljuk Rebello that her summoning shares her alchemy skill with him, granting him the power to transmute items through equivalent exchange. Opening his status window, Diljuk Rebello discovers he can create items by expending equal magical energy, though deep mechanics of the craft remain unknown. Testing his alchemical transformation, Diljuk Rebello successfully materializes a pristine lamp, grasping the core basics of Cindy Keen's invaluable utility craft. Astonished by his instant success, Diljuk Rebello is praised by Cindy Keen, who swells with pride seeing her master craft an item on his first attempt. Though transmuting items drains his magical reserve, Diljuk Rebello realizes this extraordinary craft can revitalize the entire settlement. Eager to assist, Cindy Keen channels her magic across the room, restoring every broken tool and damaged furnishing to pristine working condition in moments. Asking for another light source, Diljuk Rebello entrusts the task to Cindy Keen, placing the same absolute trust in her as he does in Hakuryu. Working her alchemy, Cindy Keen conjures an elegant flower-shaped lamp supported by a graceful stem, crowned with glowing petals shaped like a blooming bud. Stunned by the exquisite artifact, Diljuk Rebello grips Cindy Keen by the shoulders and asks if she can forge other magical tools, struck by a plan for Tenma. Sensing her master is rather dense in romance, Cindy Keen sighs softly before cheerfully encouraging him to place all his faith in her ancient craftsmanship. In rapid succession, Cindy Keen fabricates an enchanted goblet producing fresh water alongside an insulated magical box capable of freezing food. Diljuk Rebello marvels at these relics, knowing standard city lamps barely illuminate a bed, completely outmatched by her radiant ancient technology. Surprised by this revelation, Cindy Keen explains that primitive lamps rely on fuel, whereas artifacts from her civilization run purely on channeled mana. Such enchanted items were everyday conveniences 4,000 years ago, highlighting the colossal technological gulf between the two eras. Pondering the past, Diljuk Rebello wonders what catastrophe wiped out an advanced civilization whose everyday inventions far surpassed modern human achievements. With such miraculous ancient alchemy, Diljuk Rebello can elevate the daily lives of every settler in Tenma. Beyond daily conveniences, this lost craft offers the power to resurrect the vanished civilization whose history was erased from all royal records. A thrill rushes through him, realizing that reviving such forgotten advancements will provide his people with countless invaluable tools and legendary marvels. Pledging her full dedication, Cindy Keen promises to devote all her power to assist Diljuk Rebello, fulfilling the true purpose of her summoning. Holding the magic lamp, Cindy Keen lets its warm, radiant light illuminate her face. Chosen by this ancestral power, Diljuk Rebello stands at the dawn of a grand destiny, with countless ancient spirits waiting to be awakened into the world. With heartfelt warmth, Cindy Keen cheers up Diljuk Rebello, assuring him that boundless success lies ahead on their journey as she gently hands him the glowing lamp. Exiled to this frontier, Diljuk Rebello discovers a true purpose through his awakened magic, determined to shoulder the hopes of the villagers who depend on him. When Diljuk Rebello questions her ancient idiom, Cindy Keen blushes in embarrassment, realizing 4,000 years of linguistic shifts separate their worlds. A warm smile crosses the face of Diljuk as the words resonate with him. Their entire journey still lies ahead, and he fully grasps the true meaning of the promise he shares with Cindy. Reviving the lost ancient civilization and forging an entirely new era becomes his true ambition, driving Diljuk to grow stronger as his grand purpose takes definitive shape. Bringing prosperity to the people of Tenma stands as his foremost duty. With newfound power at his command, he vows to elevate their lives alongside settlers eager to support their lord. Extending his hand, Diljuk asks Cindy to watch over him, and she accepts with a confident smile, sealing their mutual responsibility as trusted partners walking this long path together. Clasping his hand tightly, Cindy pledges to stand beside him through every trial, embracing the long-awaited moment she had dreamed of for centuries. Practical concerns soon strike Diljuk as he mentions needing a second bed, instantly annoying Cindy, who had assumed one shared mattress would finally bring them closer. Dusk settles over their lighthearted banter, yet sinister eyes linger in the nearby woods as two lurking bandits spy on the house, signaling imminent trouble for the new lord. Bright morning light ushers in clear skies, as Cindy greets Diljuk cheerfully with a frying pan in hand, having woken up at dawn to prepare the household before he opened his eyes, eager to prove her worth following the summon. Cindy used ancient alchemy to forge cooking utensils from scratch, determined to surprise Diljuk with a hearty home-cooked meal. Their pantry sits completely empty without a single ingredient, leaving Cindy thoroughly crestfallen after pouring her heart into preparing a delightful surprise for her master. Frustrated that alchemy cannot fabricate edible food from thin air, Cindy frets over feeding her master, though Diljuk gently reassures her that their lack of rations is no disaster. Securing a sustainable food supply takes top priority, prompting Diljuk to inspect the local farmland where cultivated crops ought to provide daily sustenance for the entire community. Breakfast consists of fried snaketail out of necessity. Cindy hesitates at the bizarre dish, even though Hakuryu had previously praised the monster meat as surprisingly delicious. Arriving at the parched fields of Tenma, Cindy observes the grim reality Diljuk inherited: cracked soil desperate for water, meager crops, and an acute shortage of working hands. Spotting the pair, the village elder calls out to Diljuk with deep gratitude for yesterday's heroic rescue, openly proud to serve such a brave and dependable young lord. Noticing the elder hard at work, Diljuk inquires about the crop rows, and the old man explains he chose to clear stubborn weeds in the open rather than risk the monster-infested woods. Thick overgrowth chokes the entire plot, leaving too few farmers to weed the neglected soil. Turning his attention to the unfamiliar maiden beside Diljuk, the curious elder asks who she is, having never seen such an elegant newcomer in their territory. Before Diljuk can introduce her, Cindy proudly proclaims herself his future bride, prompting him to blush and clarify that she is an ancient spirit summoned alongside his dragon. When Cindy reveals her mastery over ancient alchemy, the elder listens in utter bewilderment, knowing such mythical crafting arts vanished from the continent centuries ago. Choosing demonstration over explanation, Cindy manifests an alchemical transmutation array and instantly crafts a gleaming farming scythe perfectly suited for field clearing. Awed by the instantaneous fabrication, the elder marvels at Cindy and her dedication to supporting Diljuk and bringing prosperity to the people of Tenma. Handing the implement over, Cindy declares her resolve to aid every villager for the sake of the grand dream. Diljuk pursues, radiating genuine kindness and earnest determination. Urging the old man to test it, Cindy explains that the enchanted tool channels mana so effortlessly that even a young child could operate it without fatigue. Swinging the scythe with ease, the elder gasps in pure delight as the blade effortlessly cleaves through tough roots, realizing how dramatically it will revolutionize their field labor. Demonstrating the hidden switch, Cindy reveals the tool can instantly reshape into a hoe or a plow, filling the grateful farmer with immense joy at how effortless their tasks will become. Impressed by her handiwork, Diljuk praises Cindy and asks to learn the formula himself so they can mass-produce these magical implements for every resident in the settlement. Gladly agreeing, Cindy points out an essential principle. Transmuting mass metal demands strict adherence to the fundamental laws governing all alchemical creation. Cindy explains the core rule of equivalent exchange, where metal absorbs focused magical energy and reshapes its molecular structure into the desired tool. Leaning close to Diljuk, she explains that items forged purely through magic naturally pull toward one another through a subtle magnetic resonance. Taking the concept to heart, Diljuk scribbles the magnetic principle into his notebook alongside practical analogies, refusing to overlook any vital arcane detail. Channeling the transmutation skill, Diljuk successfully crafts an identical replica of the tool, matching the creation of Cindy stroke for stroke with his newly acquired magic. Presenting the finished piece to Cindy, he receives her joyful praise as the enchanted blade emits a low hum and a bright magical glow. The craft nets Diljuk 200 skill points. Civic labor and domestic assistance readily replenish his points, delighting Cindy as she watches Diljuk take another concrete step toward his ambition. Filling the gauge will unlock another ancient spirit summon, requiring him to protect the populace and triumph over dangerous monsters in battle. Each summoned ancient spirit empowers the settlement directly, allowing Diljuk to accomplish dual goals at once and maximize his efficiency. A sharp scream echoes from a nearby dwelling, shattering the midday peace and instantly snapping the attention of everyone in the field toward the village cottages, pointing toward a neighboring residence. The trembling elder identifies it as the home of Letitia, terrified that harm has befallen the young woman. Diljuk rushes toward the endangered home without hesitation, joined immediately by Cindy. Reaching the cottage, they watch the front door creak weakly open as a trembling girl stumbles outside, barely able to keep her balance. Wide-eyed with terror, Letitia frantically begs Diljuk to save her abducted little sister. Peering inside, they discover ruthless bandits holding the young sister of Letitia captive, forcing Diljuk and Cindy to charge through the doorway to intervene. Overcome with grief, grief, Letitia reveals that bandits previously claimed their parents and neighbors, dreading that her little sister will suffer the same dark fate. Grasping his hilt, Diljuk readies his sword, yet a bandit presses a blade against Rena and threatens her life, forcing the rescue party to halt and rethink their strategy. Tears stream down little Rena's cheeks as she looks toward her rescuers, silently begging for salvation. Summoning Hakuryu inside tight quarters risks provoking the ruthless thugs into harming the child. Weighing the child's life with precious seconds ticking away, Diljuk hesitates, only for Cindy to step boldly between them and address the kidnappers directly, offering herself as a hostage in exchange for Rena. Cindy stuns everyone present, though her calm demeanor hints at a deliberate tactical scheme. Taken aback by the daring trade, the bandit listens as Cindy promises total cooperation without resistance, provided they release the young child unharmed. Seeing Cindy from head to toe, the bandit accepts the lucrative trade and releases Rena. Diljuk questions her reckless move, but she casually signals him to stay calm. Smirking cruelly, the bandits mock Cindy for surrendering willingly, yet she remains completely serene in her conviction that Diljuk will swiftly track her down and prevail. A gentle smile from Cindy meets the gaze of Diljuk as she departs, leaving his mind racing to unravel the hidden calculation behind her deliberate surrender. Rena rushes weeping into the arms of Letitia, traumatized by the terrifying captivity and spared from a grim fate solely by the timely arrival of their lord, securing their captive. The bandits trigger a deceptive smoke trick, vanishing completely from the cottage in the blink of an eye. Swirling haze and thick dust linger in the doorway where the kidnappers stood moments earlier. Tearfully apologizing, Letitia blames herself for the capture of Cindy, but Diljuk comforts her, stating that Cindy wields ancient magic and will surely survive unharmed. Certain that Cindy would never surrender without a cunning strategy, Diljuk feels an immense drive to launch an immediate pursuit and rescue his companion. Collapsing in despair at the bandits' shameless cruelty, the elder watches in awe as the enchanted scythe forged by Cindy begins to pulse with brilliant light. Recognizing the arcane resonance, Diljuk grasps the glowing scythe, recalling the lesson from Cindy on magnetic attraction. Summoning Hakuryu without delay, Diljuk commands the sacred dragon to fly, eager to fulfill his eternal bond as the master's combat guardian. Brought into an illuminated cavern hideout, Cindy encounters a band of laughing outlaws, utterly dumbfounded that a refined noble girl surrendered herself willingly. Viewing Cindy as a lucrative prize, the outlaws assume her elegant attire and refined appearance signify wealthy noble blood capable of fetching a massive ransom. A thorough search reveals not a single coin or gemstone on her person, shattering the criminals' greedy hopes of scoring an effortless fortune from their captive. Perplexed by her unbothered posture, the bandit leader notes that Cindy sits calmly without displaying a shred of terror, unlike the cowering captives beside her. Shoving her toward a cluster of trembling prisoners who dare not utter a sound, the bandit barks orders, stirring profound sympathy within Cindy in her heart. Cindy recognizes the captives as the missing villagers of Tenma, forced to endure miserable conditions in the squalid cavern for weeks. Taunting his new prisoner, the bandit sneers that escape is impossible with the cavern sealed shut, condemning her to rot alongside the other doomed captives. Unfazed by the threats, Cindy calmly replies that she has no fear, holding unshakable faith that Diljuk will track her down and dismantle their stronghold. Enraged by her brazen insolence, the bandit steps forward to silence her, furious that a captive dares look down upon him right before chaos erupts. Thunderous explosion shatters the cavern wall directly behind the outlaws, bringing profound relief to Cindy, who instantly recognizes her master's arrival. Spinning around in utter fury, the bandits brandish their weapons, shocked that an outsider could breach the perimeter of their hidden underground fortress. Diljuk emerges through the swirling smoke with drawn steel, offering an apology for the brief delay after tracing the arcane resonance straight to Cindy. Bewildered by how he located their secluded hideout, the bandits draw their weapons for a lethal clash to defend their stronghold against the intruding lord. Explaining their trick, Diljuk reveals that the magnetic pull between their matched tools guided him straight to her coordinates. Paired magical relics naturally attract across distance. Teeming with pride, Cindy praises Diljuk for his quick thinking, overjoyed that he deciphered her unspoken clue and navigated the wilderness so flawlessly. Rattled by the intrusion, the outlaws quickly regroup, boasting that they have yet to unleash their deadliest combat tricks and dark magic. Refusing to back down, the pterodactyl's bandit unleashes hostile magic, channeling an aggressive spell to overpower the swordsman. Unfazed by the enemy's sorcery, Diljuk closes the distance with blinding speed, catching the pterodactyl's bandit completely off guard before he can react. Unleashing the Rebello-style star shadow slash, Diljuk cuts down the first bandit without breaking a sweat, marking a decisive first strike to save Cindy and the captured villagers. Terror grips the second bandit as he wonders who attacked, but Diljuk already glides behind him to strike, proving the lethal precision of his blade firsthand. In seconds, every bandit lies neutralized. Diljuk thanks Cindy for guiding him straight to the hideout, pulling off a flawless rescue built entirely on mutual trust. Cries of joy erupt from the hostages as their nightmare ends, disbelief turning into pure relief after fearing they would never see daylight again. Seeing how many captives the bandits took, Diljuk understands why Tenma fell into ruin ruin, preyed upon constantly by roaming outlaws. Unlocking their chains, Diljuk and Cindy restore the freedom stolen by criminals, unaware of just how much hope they have brought back to these people. With the villagers unbound, Diljuk spots an iron grate deeper in the cave and steps closer to investigate. Behind the heavy bars sit captive demi-humans, locked away as victims of the outlaw gang. Approaching gently, Diljuk asks if the dwarf is hurt, but the terrified captive can scarcely believe rescue has actually arrived, confirming their freedom is real. Diljuk calls everyone outside. Tears well in the dwarf's eyes as he recounts how his people were always oppressed and discarded, overwhelmed to finally be treated with genuine dignity. Removing the shackles, Diljuk promises that their ordeal is over, restoring peace to lives long burdened by fear and uncertainty. Eager to protect all living souls, Diljuk extends his hand to the inquiring dwarf and introduces himself as the Lord of Tenma. Flustered by a noble reaching out to him, the dwarf gratefully shakes hands and vows to repay his debt to Tenma, having never known such respect. Grateful for the gesture, Diljuk asks whether the dwarves want to return home, assuming they would wish to reach their native lands immediately. War of an honor forbids returning home until a debt of life is repaid, and another beast man steps forward eager to thank Diljuk for saving them. A warrior from the bear tribe also offers his service, worried only that his towering frame, thick fur, and beastly ears might frighten ordinary villagers. Rescued villagers step forward to explain that shared suffering united them all, promising to convince everyone in Tenma that the demi-humans are true allies. Heartened by their solidarity, Diljuk assures them that Tenma welcomes everyone, speaking with absolute confidence despite a newcomer status. Filled with relief and joy, the entire group sets off toward Tenma. Hakuryu guides the rescued party home, and Diljuk's ancient spirits praise Cindy for the brilliance and unwavering loyalty she displayed. Spotting their parents waiting ahead, Letitia and little Rena dash forward in tears. Overjoyed to see both daughters unharmed, the parents apologize and pull their children into a tight embrace. With every villager returned safely, Letitia asks Cindy how they can ever repay her for the rescue. Cindy brushes off the praise, insisting that Diljuk deserves all the thanks for orchestrating the rescue. Grasping Diljuk's hands, Letitia vows never to forget his heroic deed as once terrified parents weep and hold their children close. Peace returns to Tenma as Diljuk crushes the outlaw threat, giving the villagers a true lord under whose steadfast protection they can finally sleep without fear. Presenting his new allies to the villagers, Diljuk introduces the dwarves and bear tribe who came to help rebuild Tenma despite years of painful rejection. Surprised whispers ripple through the village, leaving the dwarves and bears anxious about their reception after years of hiding in the shadows from human hatred. Breaking the tense silence as the crowd watches in suspense, Letitia steps forward to meet the new guests. Opening her arms, Letitia thanks the dwarves and bears for protecting her parents in the cave, startling the beastmen who never expected warmth from humans. Letitia explains that shared hardship has forged them into friends, proving that enduring tragedy side by side has softened the villagers' hearts. Nodding in agreement, the villagers declare that having dwarves and bears among them brings security, welcoming the demi-humans into their community at last. Deeply moved by this sincere acceptance, the dwarves and bears feel a warmth long denied to them, bringing shared joy to Cindy and Diljuk. Approaching Diljuk, the dwarves admit that Tenma is just as welcoming as he promised, far exceeding anything they could have anticipated. Expressing his gratitude, Diljuk welcomes the bears and dwarves, counting on their craftsmanship and strength to rebuild Tenma. Eager to raise sturdy houses, the dwarves pledge their masonry, and the bears offer heavy labor, lifting the spirits of the entire village. This breakthrough marks only the first step toward prosperity for Tenma, yet Diljuk moves forward with unwavering focus to secure his people's future. Arriving in the bustling commercial city, Cindy and Diljuk collect a hefty bounty from the guards, having wiped out the bandit ring and saved the captives. Local guards had been utterly helpless against the bandits, leaving the officers visibly flustered when Diljuk and Cindy delivered the captives. Several days after capturing the outlaws, Diljuk and Cindy traveled to the nearest city to claim their official reward from authorities. Crushing the outlaw band lifts a dark shadow across the entire region, bringing relief to city dwellers and the folk of Tenma alike. Taking in the sights, Diljuk and Cindy observe the bustling city crowds. Cindy compares the vibrant streets to the lost era, explaining to Diljuk that ancient civilizations possessed far more advanced metropolises, though impressed by the city's lively atmosphere. Diljuk remarks that the lost wonders crafted through ancient alchemy far surpass modern civilization. Clinging to Diljak's arm, Cindy smiles and declares that the finest city is wherever she can walk beside her master. Beaming with joy, Cindy hoped for a leisurely day flying on Hakuryu, but Diljuk reminds her of their crucial mission in town, intent on establishing commerce. Diljuk explains that Tenma cannot thrive in isolation, sparking Cindy's fascination with his bold plan to connect their domain. Poverty plagues the village due to isolation, driving Diljuk to mass produce and sell valuable goods crafted through their shared mastery of alchemy. High-value trade items will generate vital funds for Tenma, and Cindy places absolute faith in Diljak's business strategy. Their destination is the Maple Chamber of Commerce, renowned as the wealthiest merchant merchant guild in the kingdom. Stepping inside the headquarters, Cindy and Diljuk meet a merchant at the counter who notes he has never seen them before. Prompted by the merchant to state their business without delay, Diljuk declares that he has brought exclusive goods to sell. Assuming the wares are ordinary household utensils, the merchant scoffs at buying useless junk, demanding truly exceptional goods worthy of his gold. Unshaken by the condescension, Diljuk places a bag of items on the counter, challenging the skeptical trader to inspect the goods first. Struck by Diljuk's calm confidence and commanding poise, the merchant agrees to inspect the merchandise, setting out 2 cups and an alchemical lamp. Diljuk watches as the merchant inspects the pieces through a lens, recognizing their exceptional rarity. Cindy tells the skeptical merchant to touch the embedded magic stone, and though convinced it is a waste of time, he reluctantly complies. The moment his finger touches the magic stone, pure water fills the glass, leaving the merchant utterly stunned. Unable to fathom such a marvel, the trader demands to know how water could possibly generate inside the cup on its own. Detailing the enchantment, Cindy explains that mana inside the magic stone produces a full cup of fresh drinking water every single hour with no effort. Approaching the lamp, Cindy activates the rune, instantly bathing the entire room in brilliant light. Dazzled by the radiant glow, the merchant reels in disbelief at the artifact's power. Eager to buy all the wares, the merchant doubles his initial offer, offering 100,000 coins for each lamp and cup. Diljuk welcomes the massive payout, which far exceeds his expectations, and delivers a fortune capable of revitalizing Tenma's struggling economy. Exchanging an approving nod with Cindy, Diljuk celebrates the success of his bold plan to partner with the kingdom's greatest trading guild. Twirling his fountain pen, the eager merchant prepares a formal contract to secure the miraculous goods and asks Diljuk for his name. Realizing he never formally introduced himself, the Lord reveals his full name, Diljuk Rebello. Hearing the legendary name Rebello, sheer terror grips the merchant's face in absolute shock. Bowing with a trembling voice, the merchant frantically apologizes for his rudeness toward Diljuk Rebello, who tells him to put his fears aside, clarifying his standing. Diljuk explains that he no longer serves the crown, acting now simply as a dedicated swordsman and lord of Tenma. Presenting his true request, Diljuk asks the merchant to send trading caravans directly to Tenma, unlocking vital economic growth for his villagers. The merchant hesitates, acknowledging that dispatching trade caravans across such a remote and hazardous route poses immense financial and logistical risks. Recognizing the valid concerns regarding distance and dangerous roads, Diljuk fully understands why a merchant guild hesitates to risk valuable caravans. Highlighting the vast, untapped lands of Tenma, Diljuk emphasizes the immense long-term profits awaiting early trade partners. Direct access to Tenma's exclusive magic items without bureaucratic middlemen promises massive mutual profit for both parties. Skeptical of the proposal, the merchant recalls rumors of monster attacks and bandit raids, refusing to send his employees into deadly peril. Diljuk presents an official commendation from the authorities, proving that the bandit menace has been eliminated and the roads to Tenma are secure. Stunned that the kidnappers were wiped out, the merchant breathes a sigh of relief. Serge agreed to dispatch his trade caravan to Tenma next time to secure the profitable partnership. Offering his hand, Serge eagerly awaited their next trade, and Diljuk shook on the deal, delighted that Maple gained fine goods as Tenma unlocked vast new opportunities. Flying back home with their mission accomplished, Diljuk gave heartfelt thanks to Hakuryu for providing incomparable speed and effortless aerial transport across the realm. With a steady income secured to improve life across Tenma, the villagers, dwarves, and bear tribe gathered together, gazing in wonder as the great white dragon soared overhead. Warriors of the bear tribe rushed to greet Diljuk with deep gratitude, and waving back, he noticed they had already finished constructing an entire wooden house. Astonished by the rapid construction, Diljuk offered high praise, though the modest dwarf blushed with embarrassment and insisted it was merely an ordinary shack. Examining the gleaming structure, Diljuk refused to call it a simple shack when every timber fitted together flawlessly without a single crack, hole, or flaw in sight. Smiling with quiet pride at pleasing his lord, the dwarf proved that his kin possessed masterclass building talents that were nearly impossible to find anywhere else. Vowing never to fall to bandits again, a bear warrior hoisted a heavy timber log, proving how their daily manual labor doubled as intense combat training. Watching on, the villagers noted how dependable the dwarves and bears were. Diljuk saw the locals working side by side with the newcomers, gladly lending a helping hand. Though previously frightened of beastmen, the villagers now placed complete trust in them, confident that the dwarves and bears possessed honest, noble intentions. Deeply moved by their acceptance, the bear lacked words to thank Diljuk for granting them a true home where humans and demi-humans could finally rely on one another. Returning their gratitude, Diljuk felt proud of Tenma's revival, yet recognized that their overgrown farmland urgently required cultivation. Restoring the fields remained vital to feed the growing settlement and build grain reserves for the harsh winter ahead. Letitia approached Diljuk with a sweet smile, carrying a heavy clay jug to water the soil by hand before heading back for another refill. Asked about the water supply, Letitia explained that she hauled each drop from a distant stream. Watching her trek back and forth, Cindy pointed out that hauling small jugs was futile for for irrigation now that Tenma's rapid growth demanded immense amounts of water. Recalling his newly raised alchemy skill, Diljuk delighted Cindy by investing his accumulated points into ancient magic to unlock greater transmutation power. Channeling his upgraded ancient alchemy, Diljuk reshaped the dry earth, sending clouds of glowing magical dust into the air as a brand new irrigation structure materialized. Everyone watched in eager anticipation to see what his alchemy created. A pristine stone water canal stretched across the land. Cindy showered him with praise. Letitia gasped in astonishment that Diljuk carved a canal through rocky soil that would take laborers months to dig, thanking him profusely. Letitia watched the canal, but Diljuk noticed only a feeble trickle emerged, barely enough to fill a single cup, let alone irrigate their fields. Realizing the village depended entirely on this lone spring, Diljuk grew concerned that the distant water source was drying up instead of flowing freely into the settlement. Letitia explained that the stream once ran full until the flow abruptly dwindled, crippling their daily chores and making agricultural work nearly impossible for everyone. Knowing the local climate had not shifted, Diljuk concluded that something abnormal was obstructing the mountain spring and resolved to uncover the true cause. Suspecting trouble had struck deep in the forest, he prepared an expedition, well aware that deadly beasts and unknown perils lurked within the dense wilderness. Marching into the wilderness with the bear tribe to investigate the drought, Diljuk took heed as the beast men warned him to stay alert on the treacherous mountain path. Fierce monsters infested the mountain slopes and might be blocking the flow, prompting Diljuk to instruct his bear companions to scan the shadows for any sign of danger. When the bear warrior insisted Diljuk must return without a scratch, the young lord felt touched by their fierce protectiveness, even if he found their extreme worry amusing. The warrior confessed he feared facing Cindy's wrath if Diljuk was harmed, remembering how fiercely the ancient alchemist demanded absolute safety for her beloved master. Diljuk chuckled and apologized for Cindy's intense demeanor during their mission. Pulling a crafted net from his pack, Diljuk drew the bear's curiosity. He explained that the net was weighted with magic stones at each corner to snare wild boars, serving as a simple yet effective hunting tool for their upcoming expeditions. Once target prey steps inside, the magical trap snaps shut, though an allied human can easily disarm it with a single touch, dubbing it an automatic security capture network. The bears marveled at his genius and eagerly set up traps, thrilled that securing meat would become far easier. Securing wild game here meant the villagers would not have to risk perilous mountain hunts, and satisfied with their progress, Diljuk and the bears pressed deeper into the woods. A's toxic magical miasma thickened around them, making the wilderness increasingly treacherous. The lead bear stepped forward with a serious request for the village lord. With resolute determination in his eyes, the warrior asked Diljuk to let the bear tribe take the vanguard against any monster they encountered along the trail. Acknowledging that despite their immense physical strength they had still been captured by bandits, the warrior burned with shame and wanted to prove their true worth. Since Diljuk had rescued them from bondage, the bears longed to unleash their full combat potential and demonstrate their loyalty before their respected new master. Diljuk granted permission, though refusing to leave them unprotected. He offered to coordinate their tactics directly from the rear. The bears gladly accepted, but without warning, a menacing growl shattered the silence as a colossal, terrifying beast emerged from the dense shadows. Dropping into combat stances, they confronted a ferocious three-headed beast, its towering muscular frame dripping venomous saliva from 3 pairs of snapping jaws. Issuing swift tactical orders, Diljuk told the vanguard to encircle the beast as one warrior guarded his flank, and the bears held their ground awaiting his command. Recognizing that the creature's 3 heads eliminated blind spots, Diljuk devised a coordinated strategy to disorient its vision through rapid close-quarters pressure. Clenching his paw into a fist, the bear prepared to unleash his primal fury. Charging forward with explosive force, the warrior smashed his fist into the beast, cleanly crushing one of its heads in a display of sheer power. Diljuk admired the strike, but urged everyone to remain on high alert. Following a signal from Diljuk, another warrior hurled a heavy boulder into the beast, executing the order with total precision. With the monster reeling, a third bear lunged forward and drove a spear deep into its chest, proving their formidable strength and unwavering reliability in battle. As the beast collapsed in defeat, the bears credited their master's guidance, and Diljuk stepped forward with a broad smile to commend their flawless teamwork. Emboldened by victory, the party pressed ahead toward the nearby spring with high spirits. Reaching their destination, Diljuk stood speechless before a magnificent mountain spring, where crystal-clear water cascaded down towering rock cliffs into a wide natural basin. Peering into the pristine basin where the pebbled bottom shone clearly, Diljuk knew this reservoir could supply Tenma for generations, yet an unnatural barrier blocked the outlet. Spotting a massive boulder choking the stream, a confident bear warrior volunteered to smash the obstruction with his shovel, assuming it would be a quick and effortless task. The moment the warrior approached with his shovel, the boulder began to grind and shudder. Far from an ordinary rock, the obstacle was a massive stone golem, slowly rising to its towering height before the stunned group. Craning their necks to look up at the stone colossus, the bears followed Diljuk without hesitation as he ordered them to pelt it with heavy rocks. Though the thrown rocks bounced harmlessly off the golem's dense hide, calm reassurance from Diljuk kept the bears steadfast, backed by his proven record of decisive leadership. Drawing his blade, Diljuk vaulted into the air, using the Rebello style, aiming to wedge the lodged stones directly into its joints to lock the colossus in place. Targeting the vulnerable joint, Diljuk unleashed the fiery incision of the full moon, severing the golem's massive leg and sending fractured boulders crashing into the water. Realizing that shattered rubble threatened to clog the entire reservoir and ruin their mission to free the spring, Diljuk knew he had to switch tactics and obliterate the golem cleanly. Diljuk summoned Hakuryu to his aid. Channeling the Rebello style, he unleashed the crushing sword skill, striking the golem's core directly. He caused the massive construct to disintegrate into vanishing dust without leaving harmful debris behind. Stunned by such overwhelming martial prowess, the bears watched in awe as Diljuk drove a knife into the glowing crystal left behind in the dust. Identifying the artifact as an energy stone that powered the construct, he pocketed the prize. Cheering with broad smiles, the bears praised Diljuk as he thanked them in return, celebrating that with the golem destroyed, pure spring water would now flow freely to Tenma. Eager to witness the joyful faces of the villagers when water reached the fields, the triumphant group began their journey back home. Meanwhile, in the royal capital of Gethel, Octo Higgins arrived before King Gutter. King Gutter glared down with displeasure at Octo Higgins, who scowled in return as the monarch demanded to know if the spoiled noble even understood why he had been summoned. Interrogated about his disastrous royal duties, Octo Higgins panicked, his mind racing through desperate excuses to escape punishment for his mounting incompetence. Having appointed Octo to replace Diljuk, the furious king berated him for allowing wild beasts to breach the royal castle, leaving the cowardly noble trembling in silence. When a wolf-like demon attacked, knights trained by Diljuk fought bravely, whereas Octo Higgins stood frozen in terror instead of commanding his troops. Enraged by how vastly inferior Octo was compared to Diljuk Rebello, King Gutter roared in absolute fury at his pathetic royal assistant. Though the son of Duke Higgins, Octo ruined his reputation through drunkenness, indolence, and cruelty toward the knights, completely neglecting his sworn duties to the crown. Sitting upon his royal throne, King Gutter pronounced judgment and suspended Octo Higgins from all official duties for an entire month. Stunned by the severe one-month suspension, Octo Higgins protested in disbelief, his arrogant face contorted with panic and despair. King Gutter gave his ultimatum for a clear reason, demanding Octo Higgins reform his conduct within a strict deadline. The aging monarch had shoulder-length gray hair and a long silver beard. Pressing a hand to his chest, Octo Higgins protested his innocence and bickered, but King Gutter had heard enough and refused to tolerate another hollow excuse from the disgraced nobleman. Icy disgust filled the monarch's gaze as he ordered his aide out of the throne room immediately, unable to bear the sight of him after the disaster he caused. Flushing crimson with suppressed rage, Octo Higgins gritted his teeth, clicked his tongue, and muttered a stiff apology before turning on his heel to storm out. Past the heavy throne room doors, he clenched his trembling fists and cursed aloud, letting his boiling fury spill into the empty hallway. Marching down the corridor at a near sprint, the furious noble seethed with indignation, drawing bewildered glances from palace servants who stepped out of his path. Bitter memories stung him. How officials praised Diljuk Rebello for finishing duties by dawn, demanded paperwork match the standard of Diljuk, and whispered that Diljuk surpassed him in every way. Diljuk Rebello had thwarted him at every turn, and even in distant exile, his lingering shadow drove Octo Higgins to fury. Stalking alone down the shadowy passage, he spat curses at Diljuk and vowed to enact brutal vengeance. King Gutter sighed softly and looked up, heavy disappointment clouding his face. Though Octo Higgins claimed great talent, the king never imagined his aide had simply stolen the achievements of Diljuk by abusing noble rank. By contrast, Diljuk had been truly exceptional. Beside the throne, they had discussed vital state affairs with profound mutual understanding and complete trust. Reports of Diljuk plotting a rebellion had struck like a thunderbolt, shattering the monarch's trust and leaving him paralyzed with shock. Because the accusation came directly from Duke Higgins's son, the monarch could not disregard the warning. Using demotion as a pretext, the king banished Diljuk. Deep in his heart, the king wondered if a real rebellion led by Diljuk might have guided the realm toward a brighter fate. Sitting alone in solemn silence, the aged ruler pressed a trembling hand to his brow, realizing pure fear had governed his actions. Diljuk possessed immense talent, widespread popularity, and natural leadership. He commanded every trait of a true ruler, and had he risen up, legions would have rallied to him. Gazing into his half-filled goblet, the old monarch pleaded for forgiveness as a weak ruler, though his quiet apology reached empty air. Banishing Diljuk was his grave mistake and sheer cowardice. Far away on a cloudless morning, bright sunlight warmed the wooden roofs of Tenma. Staring in wonder at a full cup of water, little Rena asked if she was truly allowed to drink so much, marveling at such simple abundance. Stepping forward with a bright smile, Rena thanked Diljuk and he returned a warm nod. Fresh water flowed in abundance now, free for everyone to drink without limit. Diljuk had installed a novel pump in Tenma. Instead of hauling buckets from a dark pit, pressing the lever sent fresh water pouring straight from the spout. All of it came from the alchemy of Cindy, and when Diljuk gestured toward her, Cindy giggled with quiet pride. A nearby villager invited Cindy over to recount the heroic exploits of Diljuk, and she eagerly hurried across to hear every single detail. Amused by her enthusiasm, Diljuk chuckled warmly, his eyes narrowing into happy crescents. Reliable water secured the fields and transformed Tenma, leaving joyful villagers gathered with brimming buckets to share the good news. A resonant chime echoed from the skill panel, startling Diljuk with an unexpected alert. Rejoining his side, Cindy announced that their master had accumulated fresh skill points. Opening his status menu, Diljuk saw his balance hit 1,000 points, unlocking a new ancient spirit summon. Bursting with curiosity, Cindy urged him to cast the spell at once, and Diljuk felt just as eager to discover who would appear. Extending his palm, Diljuk commanded the ancient spirit to cross time and manifest, his hand blazing with radiant light. As the ancient incantation took hold, a dense cloud of steam and dust spiraled into a swirling vortex. Through the settling dust emerged the silhouette of a long-haired maiden in a floor-length gown. Lifting her gaze, she revealed striking eyes that locked onto Diljuk, freezing him in place, as recognition instantly washed over him. Their earlier trek into the forest had uncovered a stone golem blocking the spring, which they defeated to restore the water flow. With the spring restored, residents flocked to the new pump, enjoying clean running water throughout Tenma. That victory pushed his balance to 1,000 points, and eager to meet his next ancient ally, Diljuk extended his open hand. Amidst swirling smoke, a dark-haired maiden in a long gown sat upon the earth, instantly recognized by both Cindy and Diljuk as she lifted her eyes. Standing before them was Alice, clad in a floor-length white uniform with an ornate sash draped gracefully from her waist to her knees. Gazing up at Diljuk, Alice flinched with bashful surprise and stammered a timid greeting, leaving him mildly flustered. Clutching her fists tightly against her chest, Alice squirmed under the gaze of Diljuk in obvious awkwardness. Noticing her tension, Diljuk extended a reassuring hand and introduced himself, assuring her that she had no reason to feel uneasy. Turning away with crimson cheeks, the girl introduced herself as Alice, flustering over her own words in sheer embarrassment. Diljuk offered a polite handshake in welcome, but Alice gasped, covered her glowing face behind her dark hair, and let out panicked squeaks of mortification. Covering her mouth with a palm, Cindy leaned toward Diljuk and whispered that Alice had always been terribly bashful. Cindy praised her as an extraordinary ancient spirit and peerless chef, driving Alice to bury burning red cheeks in both hands from sheer fluster. Surprised by the mention of cooking, Diljuk stroked his chin and asked if culinary mastery was truly her specialty, clasping her hands. Alice confirmed that culinary craft was her signature skill, her posture straightening with newfound unshakable confidence. Diljuk marveled at having a master chef among his spirits, and Cindy closed her eyes in pure bliss at the mere memory of the divine feast cooked by Alice. Beaming with excitement, Cindy grabbed Alice by the hand and pulled her forward, eager for everyone to witness her legendary cooking. Using alchemy, Cindy crafted pristine cookware and arranged a spotless, spacious kitchen so Alice could display her talents without restriction. Adopting a focused look, Alice tied her hair into a neat ponytail so not a single strand would touch the food. Setting to work, she sliced fresh lettuce leaves with lightning speed and flawless knife technique. Moving past the salad, she expertly chopped every remaining ingredient in rapid succession. Stirring a simmering broth, Alice requested another pot, which Cindy instantly transmuted through alchemy. Diljuk observed how Alice transformed over the stove. The hesitant, bashful girl vanished, replaced by a razor-sharp, decisive culinary artist. When the feast was complete, quiet pride glowed across the face of Alice as she admired the magnificent spread. Her banquet featured grilled wild boar, cream-braised boar cheeks, wheat noodles, and rich chicken broth, stunning Diljuk with its scale, seeing gigantic pots filled to the brim. Diljuk wondered with slight concern how just 3 people could finish such a colossal feast. Alice shrank back with an apologetic gasp, confessing that her culinary passion had gotten the better of her. Diljuk smiled warmly and dismissed her worries, pointing out that an enormous feast made for a perfect celebration. With food in great abundance, they resolved to invite all the villagers of Tenma. Platters were arranged along a grand table welcoming local residents into the hall. Eager residents gazed at the steaming dishes, turning to beam with gratitude as Diljuk set down the final platter. The warrior from the bear tribe tasted the first bite beside Devado the dwarf, both roaring in sheer delight at the melt-in-the-mouth tenderness of the meat. Cindy stuffed both cheeks and beamed contentedly, praising the exquisite flavor. An impressed guest asked if her name was Alice, declaring that such extraordinary talent could easily run a grand restaurant. Blushing modestly, Alice admitted that she had once managed her own dining hall in the ancient era. Tasting the culinary creations himself, Diljuk marveled at the divine flavor, and Alice stood beside him watching with eager, hopeful eyes. Diljuk had never tasted such perfection. Properly bled wild boar removed all gaminess, and crisp vegetables preserved in the alchemical freezer of Cindy elevated the dish. Witnessing her devotion, Diljuk recognized a true passion for culinary art, and Alice nodded in heartfelt agreement. Before long, every plate lay clean as the guests finished their meal. Sitting before his clean plate, Diljuk turned toward Alice and offered sincere thanks for the feast. Clenching his fist, Diljuk felt a rush of newfound strength coursing through his limbs, a sensation Cindy confirmed she shared. Alice explained that her cooking bestowed magical buffs, revealing that summoning a new spirit also granted Diljuk access to their abilities. A level 1 cooking skill appeared in his status window, allowing meals he prepared to boost the magical power of those who ate them. Her cooking boosts both magical power and spell resistance, turning every meal into an incredible combat buff. By preparing dishes imbued with ancient magic, she grants Diljuk higher spell damage alongside a fortress-like barrier against enemy sorcery. Each distinct flavor grants protection against a different element, spicy dishes shielding against fire, and salty recipes warding off wind attacks. Even better, the defensive bonus applies regardless of taste, proving that her cooking reliably strengthens his offensive and defensive magic. Diljuk admits he could never match the masterclass cooking Alice creates. Pressing her hand over her heart, Alice gladly volunteers to handle the kitchen, delighted at the thought of keeping him happy and well-fed. Flustered by her devotion, Diljuk rubs the back of his neck with flushed cheeks and offers his genuine thanks. Stepping outside to explore the village, Alice surveys the surroundings to see what crops and ingredients exist in this era 4,000 years later. A patch of wild grass catches her eye just past the doorstep, stopping her dead in her tracks with wide, stunned eyes. Recognizing genuine cultivated rice among the blades, she lets out a loud gasp of disbelief. Resting his hands on his knees from exhaustion, Diljuk walks up and asks what rice actually is. Shocked by his ignorance, she gasps again before Diljuk explains that everyone in the village simply mistook the crop for an ordinary weed. Her hoop earrings sway violently as she passionately gestures, insisting that this grain is a delicious and magnificent staple. Though Diljuk remains skeptical about eating wild grass, Alice explains that it can even be brewed into sake, making it an extraordinary find. With agriculture struggling across the village, such a versatile crop will rescue their food supply. Inquiring if she can cultivate the crop, Diljuk receives an eager confirmation. The local soil provides ideal conditions, meaning the plant will thrive here without issue. Asked to share her agricultural secrets, Alice gladly promises to teach him the full cultivation method. Still hesitating, Diljuk asks for reassurance that it is truly edible, his skeptical face betraying his lingering doubts about tasting the harvest. Before long, Alice harvests and cooks the first batch of rice, leaving Diljuk, the dwarf Devado, and the bear tribe in sheer awe over the taste, standing by the fields. Diljuk and Cindy admire the harvest, fully agreeing that Alice has integrated perfectly into Tenma, elevating their daily meals to an undeniable standard of excellence. Never imagining grain could taste so delicious until Alice prepared it, Cindy nods, knowing firsthand that her friend is an elite chef. Diljuk beams with excitement, realizing that steady rice cultivation will easily eliminate the village's lingering food shortages. Needing funds to expand Tenma, Diljuk plans to sell enchanted merchandise, confirming to Cindy that he has already coordinated with the Maple Chamber of Commerce to mass-produce those exquisite enchanted glasses for trade. He turns to the skilled dwarven craftsman for technical advice. When he announces that the merchant representative arrives today, Cindy eagerly suggests heading over to the dwarven workshop right away. Reaching the workshop, they knock on the oversized door, and a miniature entrance carved at the bottom swings open as a joyful dwarf emerges to welcome Diljuk. Apologizing for the interruption, the guests step inside to find an impeccably organized smithy, with the dwarf assuring them they arrived during a break. Cindy clenches her fists in sheer excitement, marveling at the dwarven craftsmanship that completed the entire complex just days ago with flawless precision. Pulling back a protective cloth, the smith presents the batch Diljuk requested, revealing rows of gemstone-inlaid enchanted spectacles. Examining a pair in her hands, Cindy is astonished to find they match her original creation down to the finest detail, leaving Diljuk equally impressed. Clutching the crate of spectacles, Diljuk inspects the flawless merchandise and promises the dwarf a generous reward, confident their trading struggles are over. Diljuk thanks the craftsman warmly, grateful he trusted the dwarves with the task. The craftsman credits the blueprint they drafted after disassembling the prototype, which unlocked their ability to manufacture the item on a massive scale. Planning to recruit idle villagers for the assembly line, Diljuk asks the dwarf to oversee the entire production, and the smith eagerly accepts the leadership role, leading them toward a small chest. The craftsman opens the lid to reveal another special creation Diljuk had commissioned. Resting inside lies an exquisite bracelet centered with a massive gem, prompting Cindy to ask in wonder what it does. Serving as a mana repository, the band absorbs and stores his excess magic, allowing his natural reserves to replenish over time without waste. Forged from the core of the stone golem Diljuk defeated, this artifact frees him from mana depletion worries, bringing a broad smile of satisfaction to his face. face. Admiring the craftsmanship, Cindy notes that with his expanding skill set, this mana vessel is essential for maximizing his spellcasting efficiency. Stunned that the dwarves exceeded his expectations by forging such a treasure, Diljuk praises their mastery, though the humble smith dismisses it as a simple task. Eyes sparkling with anticipation, Cindy calls out to Diljuk and asks if she can personally fasten the bracelet onto his wrist. Taking his outstretched hand into hers, she secures the band around his wrist with a beam of pure satisfaction. The band glows as it begins drawing in his mana, and the craftsman instructs him to squeeze the core whenever he needs that stored power released instantly. Cindy gushes over how handsome it looks on him, admitting that she secretly wants one for herself. Anticipating her reaction, the smith reveals an identical bracelet from his palm, explaining they crafted a matching piece, which delights Cindy instantly. Even though the duplicate is merely a decorative replica lacking mana storage, its flawless detail leaves her thoroughly impressed. Cupping her cheek with closed eyes, Cindy extends her arm with a sweet smile, asking Diljuk to return the favor by placing the bracelet on her. Before Diljuk can react, the oblivious dwarf steps in and fastens the accessory onto her arm, asking cheerfully how the fit feels. Pouting in frustration, Cindy protests that she wanted Diljuk to do it, leaving the confused dwarf to raise his hands and offer an awkward apology. Assuring her that the band suits her perfectly, Diljuk brings a bright, hopeful smile back to her face. Cheering up, Cindy beams as Diljuk covers his mouth to discreetly ask the dwarf for additional bracelets to gift Hakuryu and Alice, and the smith confirms he has more. Overhearing his quiet request, Cindy deflates upon realizing her gift is not unique, though Diljuk only wants to prevent his other companions from feeling left out. Recognizing his boundless kindness as the exact trait she loves, Cindy lets out a soft sigh and pushes her disappointment aside. The dwarf promises to resize the remaining pieces and deliver them personally, earning sincere gratitude from Diljuk. With the trading caravan arriving for their inaugural visit, Cindy accompanies Diljuk as they say farewell to the smith and head outside to greet their guests. Cindy begins to yawn after a long wait, and Diljuk checks his pocket watch at 4:30 in the afternoon, troubled by how severely delayed the merchants are. Hearing foul play along the road, Diljuk summons Hakuryu, sending the majestic white dragon soaring into the sky to scout the surrounding forest for danger. Mounting the great dragon, Diljuk and Cindy sweep across the canopy, scanning the dense wilderness below to locate the missing wagon. Cindy spots a solitary carriage stranded beneath the trees and points it out. Vaulting off Hakuryu, he dismounts before the beast even touches down, approaching the terrified coachman Surge to ask what happened. Diljuk immediately spots the deadly threat before the driver can even utter a warning. Poking through the carriage curtain behind the driver, a gleaming sword tip rests against Surge's neck, catching Diljuk completely off guard. Shouting at the hidden intruder, Diljuk orders him to step out of the wagon. Stepping out from the shadows, the stranger's identity hits Diljuk with total shock. Standing before him is an unhinged Octo Higgins, raving like a madman about confronting the king's former advisor, Diljuk Rebello. Facing his bitter adversary, Diljuk draws his blade and points the steel directly at Octo. Brandishing a dagger, Octo screams Diljuk Rebello's name with eyes completely devoid of sanity. When a baffled Cindy asks who this maniac is, Diljuk explains that Octo Higgins is the royal court noble responsible for exiling him from the capital. Knowing this corrupt noble ruined his life, Diljuk demands to know what business brings him to Tenma. Climbing down to the ground now that rescuers have arrived, Surge reveals that this mad noble ambushed his wagon on the road. Octo snaps around and shrieks at the driver to shut up, terrorizing Surge so badly that the merchant collapses backward onto the dirt. Claiming he brought a generous proposal, Octo prompts Diljuk to bluntly ask what he wants. Octo declares that Diljuk has been granted a full royal pardon, met only with cold, displeased silence. Insisting that Diljuk must return to Gethel at once, Octo receives only an incredulous glare from Cindy and a completely stoic silence from the young lord. Mocking Tenma as a filthy wasteland of beasts, Octo offers Diljuk a return to political prestige in the capital if he agrees to become his subservient lackey. Irritated by the intruder's arrogant rambling, Cindy urges Diljuk to finally give an answer. Thrusting his sword closer to Octo's throat, Diljuk orders him to leave immediately, wiping the smug expectation clear off the nobleman's face. Refusing to ever become a pawn or follow his corrupt orders, Diljuk asserts that he is the rightful lord of Tenma, provoking Octo into a tense and venomous sneer. Lunging at the helpless merchant on the ground, Octo grabs Surge by the collar and slices his cheek with a dagger, taunting Diljuk over whether he truly has any choice. Refusing Octo Higgins means instant doom for Surge, demanding an immediate answer. Just as Octo savors his advantage, a massive dark shadow rises in the sky directly above and descends on them. Octo shudders at the bizarre pressure, shouting to demand what monster approaches. A thunderous voice booms from the heavens, declaring that he heard everything and will never let this outrage stand. Massive winged beast swoops down from above, claws snatching Surge by his clothes to carry him far out of the bewildered Octo's reach. Though trembling with fear, Surge stammers his thanks, met with reassurance that his survival is all that matters. Diljuk smiles warmly and thanks Hakuryu for intervening, leaving Octo to stammer in shock whether this beast is some new breed of demon, clarifying calmly. Diljuk declares the dragon is a trusted friend summoned through his magic, sparking total disbelief in Octo Higgins. Octo rants that Diljuk is an unworthy lowborn whose trash skill never worked, mocking his past, but Diljuk listens in icy silence, keeping his eyes locked onto his foe. Tossing his small blade aside, Octo sneers that no matter how many allies Diljuk summons, he remains a puny weakling. Drawing a heavy longsword, Octo points the blade at Diljuk with clear murderous intent, taunting that he can accomplish nothing alone. Admitting he may rely heavily on his companions, Diljuk glances back at them with a confident smile. Summoning remains his power, and radiant magic instantly envelops his entire frame. Octo stands dumbfounded by the strange blaze, unable to fathom what magic wraps around Diljak's flesh and drawn blade. Closing the distance with a swift step, Diljuk raises his blade to strike first, freezing his panicked foe in complete shock. Darting forward in a single burst, Diljuk rests his sharp steel against Octo's neck, forcing the terrified noble to drop his weapon onto the dirt. Stumbling back onto the dirt, Octo stares up at Diljuk in breathless panic, his flushed face twisted in pure disbelief. Thrusting an open palm forward, Diljuk channels alchemical transformation, commanding nearby roots to burst from the soil and ensnare Octo, firmly bound with no escape. Octo is left for House Higgins to recover, allowing Diljuk to turn away and rejoin his allies. Walking over to Surge, Diljuk apologizes sincerely for dragging him into the clash and urges haste toward Tenma, which the shaken merchant readily accepts with few words. Cindy calls out in awe, praising her master for his brilliant combat display, pledging to stay beside him forever. Cindy radiates pure devotion, earning a warm smile of gratitude from Diljuk. Noticing the carriage suffered structural damage, Diljuk considers repairs, but Cindy steps forward and uses her magic to mend the vehicle. One mystery still puzzles Diljuk. Why Octo roamed freely here, given that King Gutter would never permit him to leave the royal palace? Heavy galloping hoofbeats echo down the trail, prompting Diljuk to turn toward the rising noise. A white stallion comes into view bearing a uniformed rider, decorated with a royal crest that Diljuk recognizes immediately. The royal officer dismounts and confirms Diljuk's identity, explaining with clear bewilderment that he was dispatched by royal decree to locate Octo. Diljuk gestures toward Octo Higgins sitting bound in the grass, explaining that the delinquent noble was restrained after attacking an innocent merchant. Stunned by the revelation, the officer realizes that Octo escaped house arrest at the mansion only to plunge directly into reckless crime. Marching over to Octo, the royal messenger states that he carries explicit orders to haul him back to the capital of Gethel. Unrolling an official decree, the officer reads that Octo Higgins is stripped of his royal assistant post, with his suspension extended 2 months pending final punishment. Octo reels in utter horror over his dismissal, insisting that his powerful father would never permit such disgrace. Producing written confirmation signed by Duke Higgins himself, the officer instructs the disgraced noble to yield without resistance. Leaving the prisoner in the officer's custody, Diljuk receives a respectful nod as the guard moves to secure Octo. Having completed the carriage repairs with her magic, Cindy returns to Diljuk, who thanks her and orders their immediate return to Tenma. Perched safely atop Hakuryu's broad back, Surge observes the road as Diljuk and Cindy stroll over together, exchanging cheerful remarks. Desperately wriggling away from the escorting guard, Octo screams after Diljuk, demanding that he halt. Octo howls that this defeat is far from over, yet Diljuk ignores the hollow threats completely, calmly petting Hakuryu with a confident smile. Consumed by humiliation, Octo gnashes his teeth and pounds the earth in fury, spewing bitter curses. 1 month later in Tenma village, residents go about their daily routines in peace. Stepping out of his workshop with a crate, Devato greets a passing bear tribe warrior. Near the central pump, a mother fills her jug as her children laugh, watching the youngest toddler attempt to haul water. Inside the manor, Diljuk and Cindy hear a polite knock at the door and invite their guest to enter. Surge from the Maple Chamber of Commerce steps inside with warm greetings, and Diljuk notes that the merchant's facial wounds have healed cleanly over the past month. Crediting his safety to Diljuk's upgraded local security, Surge smiles warmly. Yet Diljuk offers sincere apologies for the past danger, vowing never to endanger him again. Great news follows. Enchanted status glasses supplied by Diljuk sold out across the entire market instantly. Client requests for magical tool maintenance are surging as well, pleasing Diljuk greatly. Surge marvels that Diljuk transformed repair services into a booming enterprise that drives massive sales. Hoping for ongoing ties with the Maple Chamber of Commerce, the merchant bows to depart, but Diljuk asks him to stay. With a friendly grin, Diljuk invites Surge to enjoy a hot meal before his long journey from Tenma. Moments later, a piping hot plate of food is placed before Surge, steam rising off the freshly cooked meal. Intrigued by the unfamiliar aroma, Surge asks about the recipe, prompting Diljuk to introduce Tenma's top chef Alice, who flushes modestly and presents her special pilaf. The specialty combines tender venison with fluffy spiced rice and fresh garden carrots, sautéed in oil to enhance every rich flavor. Having never encountered rice before, a curious Surge scoops up a generous spoonful, eager to taste the innovative creation. The instant the first spoonful touches his tongue, an electric shock of pure flavor jolts Surge, driving him to shout in overwhelming delight over how delicious the rice tastes. Diljuk explains that every ingredient was harvested directly from Tenma's soil, captivating Surge with the commercial value of the grain. Surge requests rights to sell the harvest through the Maple Chamber of Commerce, wanting the grain for himself. Diljuk gladly agrees on one condition: all shipments must display Tenma as their origin to build their territory's brand reputation. Pulling up a chair beside Surge, Diljuk dives straight into detailed business negotiations. Outside the manor, Cindy reviews construction blueprints with Devato, village girls gather bountiful crops, and a laborer fills his buckets at the central well. Surveying the lively square, Surge remarks that Tenma has transformed into a thriving settlement. The territory was once a barren ruin defined solely by crumbling shacks and stripped lifeless trees. Seeing diverse races coexisting in harmony across the settlement, Surge praises Diljuk for his exceptional leadership talent. Watching his people work, Diljuk modestly insists that this success does not belong to him alone. Every resident contributed to the effort, bringing a proud smile to Diljuk's face as he watches them flourish. Tenma's development has only just begun, and Diljuk promises an eager Surge that he will soon witness the territory's true greatness firsthand. Across the border, in the neighboring town of Rosas, common citizens go about their daily routines. One young local asks his companion if he heard the latest rumors regarding the rapid boom in neighboring lands. Recalling the famine and poverty that once cursed those lands, the friend wonders how they recovered, learning it stems entirely from their new lord. Citizens of Rosas pray for a change in lordship, yearning for their troubled city to prosper just like Tenma village. Stacks of trade supplies are loaded onto a two-horse wagon as Diljuk and Surge finalize details nearby. Crates of fresh produce, grain sacks, and enchanted glasses fill the wagon, drawing deep gratitude from Surge for Diljuk's premium merchandise. Tenma supplies top-tier goods alongside a sterling reputation, leaving the merchant thoroughly awed by Diljak's administrative genius. Recalling fresh rumors, Surge asks whether Tenma's boundaries truly expanded, which Diljuk confirms as a recent royal development. By decree of King Gutter, Diljuk's governing territory expanded substantially. The royal court found no other worthy administrator in the province, rewarding Tenma's flawless governance with new lands. Inquiring about the new borders, Surge learns from a pleased Diljuk that their jurisdiction over forests and rivers now stretches all the way to Rosas. Hearing the name of Rosas, Surge strokes his chin in troubled contemplation, prompting Diljuk to ask if something is amiss. Days earlier, Surge overheard a critical conversation about the border. Leaning close and shielding his mouth, Surge whispers into Diljak's ear that Octo Higgins was appointed governor over the neighboring city of Rosas. Diljak's eyes widen in genuine astonishment at the news, though Surge trusts his capability and simply wished to provide a timely warning. Having shared his warning, Surge places a hand over his heart and bows respectfully, bidding Diljuk farewell until their next meeting. Once the merchant departs, Diljuk Rebello rests his chin in his hand, sinking deep into thought. Exiled nobles from the capital are routinely sent to frontier villages, giving Duke Higgins a convenient excuse to curb Octo Higgins. Memories of Octo Higgins' vengeful, enraged glare resurface, warning that any new scheme from Rosas will put Tenma in danger. Gathering his companions, Diljuk Rebello shares the news, prompting Cindy Keen to shriek in disbelief over Octo Higgins taking rule over Rosas. Furious, Cindy Keen begs for permission to strike Octo Higgins in the neck, but Diljuk Rebello grips her shoulder to calm her down, insisting the threat is manageable and leaving her puzzled. Spreading a map across the table, Diljuk Rebello traces the border where their land adjoins Rosas through the forest, emphasizing the need for caution. Though the loyal bear tribe stands guard, their small numbers cannot protect such an immense stretch of newly expanded territory. To prepare for any incoming attack, Diljuk Rebello plans an immediate trip to survey the new frontier. Entrusting village defense to the dwarf Devato during his absence, Diljuk Rebello turns to Cindy Keen, who instantly insists on joining his trek, accepting her company without objection. Diljuk Rebello leads the way straight into the deep woods alongside Cindy Keen. Before long, the travelers press forward through the thick, shadowy forest, scanning around. Diljuk Rebello and Cindy Keen find little miasma in the air, yet hordes of hostile monsters roam the trees. An ambush by Octo Higgins remains possible, prompting Diljuk Rebello to recommend setting traps nearby. Kneeling on the soil, Cindy Keen fabricates reinforced snare nets with ancient alchemy, working alongside Diljuk Rebello to secure ropes across surrounding trees. Collapsing onto the grass exhausted, Cindy Keen groans that fortifying such a colossal forest by hand is an impossible task. Diljuk Rebello realizes their domain stretches all the way to the sea, leaving them without enough time or energy to fortify it alone. Clear system chime rings out, prompting Diljuk Rebello to inspect his glowing status window. His skill points hit 1,000 once more, boosted by lucrative magic tool sales and steady territorial expansion across Tenma. Summoning an ancient spirit skilled in defense and fort design is ideal, making Cindy Keen pump her fists in pure excitement. Fully resolved, Diljuk Rebello steps ahead into the clearing and extends his open hand. Chanting the invocation, Diljuk Rebello calls an ancient spirit to cross time and manifest. Swirling mana erupts in a vortex, crashing straight into the earth at Diljuk Rebello's side. Within the smoking crater crouches a woman with flowing blonde hair, resting a palm on the ground as she slowly raises her unfocused gaze. Stunned, Diljuk Rebello stares in awe at the summoned spirit, taking in her cropped top, tactical military trousers, and the distinctive collar necklace resting on her neck. Rising from the ground, the huntress bows before Diljuk Rebello, declaring it an honor to answer the summons as Carrot Sandy. Her greeting ends with an immense, radiant smile that crinkles her eyes in warmth. Stepping forward, Diljuk Rebello welcomes Carrot Sandy warmly, prompting her to address him with deep respect as her lord. Glancing around the unfamiliar woods, Carrot Sandy asks where they stand, learning from Diljuk Rebello that this is Tenma 4,000 years later. Astonished by the 4,000-year leap, Carrot Sandy realizes she stands in the future, smiling as she pledges to dedicate her skills to him. Both clasp hands in mutual trust, with Diljuk Rebello offering sincere thanks for her allegiance. Cindy Keen dashes over to greet her ancient friend, prompting Carrot Sandy to laugh and note that Cindy Keen remains as energetic as ever. When Cindy Keen exclaims that Carrot Sandy arrived right on time, Diljuk Rebello pauses in brief confusion over what she means. Remembering their ongoing fortification work, Diljuk Rebello inquires about her renowned trap mastery, eager to demonstrate her craft. Carrot Sandy raises her fist, but a menacing growl cuts through the thicket. Spinning around, they spot three wolf-like beast monsters with humanoid frames prowling closer, moving with grotesque gaits as they glare ferociously at the intruders. Diljuk Rebello's hand snaps straight to the sword hilt resting against his belt. Scanning the tree line, the group discovers the beasts have quietly encircled them. Concerned by the rising numbers, Diljuk Rebello weighs how best to handle an ambush from every angle. Carrot Sandy urges Diljuk Rebello to entrust the skirmish to her, stepping to the front line as he watches in surprise. Knowing her arrival came at the ideal moment, Carrot Sandy draws her gem-inlaid hammer and taps it against her palm, ready to crush all the monsters in one unified strike. With that strike against her palm, the compact tool rapidly expands into an enormous, devastating sledgehammer. Leaping forward, Carrot Sandy slams the flat circular head into the earth, sending expanding concentric shockwaves rippling across the forest floor. Diljuk Rebello watches the rippling earth in shock, baffled by the strange pulse and asking Carrot Sandy what she just unleashed. Glancing sideways, Diljuk Rebello flinches as two savage beasts charge straight toward them without slowing. More predators emerge from the shadows, sending at least 6 vicious monsters charging in to envelop the trio. Tension grips Cindy Keen and Diljuk Rebello, who seizes his sword with both hands to mount a desperate defense. The lead beast lunges with bared fangs, only for its front paw to snap directly into a hidden snare that materializes out of nowhere. 3 more beasts step into Carrot Sandy's hidden traps. Bound tight, unable to advance an inch, the entire pack collapses to the ground, howling in agony. Astounded by her prowess, Diljuk Rebello clenches his fist in admiration, marveling at how she neutralized the whole pack instantly. Carrot Sandy smiles proudly, declaring that rapid trap creation is her signature specialty. Channeling magic through her enchanted hammer, she materializes snares in an instant. Her technique reconstructs studied magical blueprints, masking their visibility so enemies never detect the concealed snares. Diljuk Rebello realizes why the devices stayed completely hidden from sight until the prowling beasts triggered them. Taking his surprise as high praise, the master huntress beams at outsmarting his senses. No target can disarm or escape her traps without fully understanding their intricate magic first. Thrilled by such flawless defensive mastery, a beaming Diljuk Rebello grabs Carrot Sandy's hands, making Cindy Keen seethe with jealousy behind them. Taken aback by his fervor, Carrot Sandy asks if he has a vital stronghold he is so eager to defend. Diljuk Rebello nods earnestly, explaining that as lord of this developing territory, protecting its growth is his greatest duty. With recent border expansions, he must prepare defenses against hostile neighbors and roaming beasts alike. Beaming with confidence, Carrot Sandy vows she is perfect for the task, stepping between them. Cindy Keen eagerly agrees with Diljuk Rebello, praising Carrot Sandy as a legendary talent. Cindy Keen reveals that in the ancient era, Carrot Sandy constructed Tenma's colossal castle, raising complex fortifications with towering ramparts of intricate geometry. Diljuk Rebello asks in surprise if she truly built Tenma's castle, having never heard of such a grand fortress in this region. Flustered Carrot Sandy waves her hands to downplay the feat, insisting it was no great accomplishment, prompting Cindy Keen to tease her bashful friend. Firing back, Carrot Sandy reveals that Cindy Keen served as the revered royal alchemist, crafting magical treasures for the crown and earning fame across Tenma. Diljuk Rebello stares in surprise at the giggling Cindy Keen, who blushes and confesses she kept her royal title secret because it did not sound cute at all. 4,000 years ago, ancient Tenma flourished under the king's rule, fostering a rich culture where people lived in lasting peace and harmony. Tenma's castle stood as the beating heart of the settlement, serving as its ultimate defensive shield and proud symbol. Protected by those impenetrable fortifications, Tenma prospered without fear of invasion. Hearing of the fortress's defense, response sparks a brilliant inspiration in Diljuk Rebello. Built to safeguard human lives, that stronghold allowed culture and civilization to flourish. Diljuk Rebello asks whether they can resurrect that same ancient castle today, sinking into deep contemplation as Cindy Keen watches. Tenma desperately needs fortified defenses, and rebuilding that ancient stronghold would elevate the settlement to unprecedented heights. Envisioning this grand future, Diljuk Rebello clenches his fists with resolve, determined to witness that lost civilization reborn. Pulling a map from his belt pouch, Diljuk Rebello unrolls the parchment before Carrot Sandy, who asks if the marked borders represent present-day Tenma. Diljuk Rebello confirms the borders, noting the terrain has barely shifted since ancient times. Having built the original fortress, Carrot Sandy explains they must adapt the ancient blueprints to match the village's current layout. Despite the challenge, Carrot Sandy speaks with unwavering certainty, guaranteeing she can restore the castle to its full former glory. Cindy Keen beams, eager to lend her alchemy so they can build it together. Overjoyed by this practical solution, Diljuk thanked his companions warmly and declared that they had to begin constructing Tenma Castle without delay. Meanwhile, in the city of Rosas, desolate streets stood quiet, a grim contrast to the bustling crowds of the past, as two familiar locals crossed paths in an alley. Having previously discussed the neighboring village, they shared grim news that agricultural trade had ground to a halt under a decree from the new lord. Only merchant guilds officially recognized by the tyrant were permitted to conduct business, leaving the blonde townsman tense and his friend horrified. Spotting a wooden sign nailed nearby, the blonde man pointed in dread, urging his friend to read the grim announcement of another tax hike. Outraged by the relentless extortion, the blonde man shook with rage and shouted in protest, cursing the fact that ever since this cruel lord seized power, everything in Rosas had collapsed. Terrified of brutal retaliation, his friend pressed a finger to his lips, urging him to keep quiet before guards overheard and punished them for speaking out. Inside a lavish office, a dark-haired man in a formal suit entered to report that the trade restrictions and tax hikes were posted and everything proceeded smoothly. Behind the desk, Octo Higgins twisted his lips into a sinister grin, practically intoxicated with malicious glee upon hearing the news. Drunk on absolute authority, Octo believed Rosas was fully under his command and plotted to conquer Tenma village from Diljuk Rebello next. Bearing heavy spears, two familiar bear tribe sentries pushed open the massive steel gates and reported to Diljuk that their perimeter patrol was complete. With a warm smile, Diljuk thanked them for their service, prompting a dark-furred bear warrior to announce that their territory was safer than ever. Towering stone walls and deep water channels surrounded the perimeter, preventing outside intruders from scaling the newly fortified defenses. Carrot Sandy had fortified Tenma village on every side, securing the settlement with reinforced ramparts and a formidable defensive moat. Approaching from behind, the ancient huntress winked playfully and declared that crafting such fortifications was effortless with her magic. In the ancient era, Carrot Sandy had been a legendary trapmaster and architect, weaving deadly magical snares and structural defenses. Eager to begin the next phase, Carrot looked forward to raising the fortress itself now that the walls and moat were completed. Rebuilding the grand ancient Tenma castle was their primary task, a massive undertaking that demanded immense labor. A bear tribe warrior stepped forward enthusiastically, noting that building alone was impossible and offering his clan's brute strength. Rubbing her chin thoughtfully, Carrot agreed that having extra hands on the construction site would make the heavy work proceed much faster. Grateful for their support, Carrot thanked the bear tribe warriors, confident their relentless stamina would ensure success. Reflecting on their daily duties, Diljuk knew the bear tribe already carried a heavy burden, dividing their time between guarding Tenma and rigorous spear drills. Knowing the strain of continuous patrols, Diljuk worried that adding castle construction would push the loyal beastmen past their limits. To ease the strain, Diljuk proposed summoning another ancient spirit for extra labor, instantly drawing the interest of his companions. Opening his glowing status window, Diljuk checked his progress and saw 800 skill points accumulated toward the required 1,000. Determined to summon a helper today, he resolved to earn the remaining points and relieve his allies of their heavy burden. Surprised by his urgency, Carrot asked why he was in such a rush, prompting Diljuk to smile and admit they could take things steadily. His earnest desire to protect and develop Tenma drove him to pour every ounce of effort into making rapid progress. Touched by his dedication, Carrot smiled warmly and praised him as an exceptional lord. Taking on countless chores, Diljuk assisted Cindy Keen with alchemy to forge enchanted eyeglasses for the Maple Chamber of Commerce. Next, he helped a village family pump fresh water, filling their clay jug under the watchful eyes of children. Alongside Carrot, he helped set magical defensive traps to safeguard the surrounding territory. Between kitchen visits to assist Alice with cooking preparations and joining the bear tribe warriors during spear drills, he aided his allies at every turn. A chime announced his success, and opening his status window, Diljuk rejoiced to see that his total had finally reached exactly 1,000 points. Stepping back from the training grounds, Diljuk raised his hand, thrilling the beastmen who gathered in excitement to witness an ancient summoning for the first time. Curious about who would answer the call, Diljuk treated the summoning like a thrilling lottery. Without reciting an elaborate incantation, he invoked the ancient spirit spirit, kicking up a roaring vortex of dust that blasted outward in all directions. A burst of magic struck the ground between Diljuk and the watching bear warriors. Before Diljuk stood a scarred veteran with long gray hair and a beard, wearing a military uniform with a sheathed sword at his hip, demanding to know why Balak had been summoned. Unlike the lively spirits summoned before, this stoic warrior wore an indifferent, ice-cold expression, clearly unimpressed by his sudden summoning. Offering a respectful bow, Diljuk introduced himself politely to the imposing swordsman. A sharp flash glinted in the corner of his vision, drawing his immediate focus toward the sudden movement. Though startled, Diljuk reacted on pure instinct, prompting the veteran in a low fighting stance to widen his eyes in brief surprise as he watched him. The sudden glint was Balak's long sword striking without warning, but Diljuk tracked the thrust and drew his own blade just in time, bracing the steel like a shield to parry the lethal blow. Furious at the unprovoked assault on their lord, the bear tribe warriors clenched their fists and roared in anger, demanding to know who this elder was. Sheathing his blade, Balak declared that he would never submit to a weakling, demanding that Diljuk prove his combat prowess before earning his loyalty. Caught off guard by the hostile reception, Diljuk realized the veteran spirit demanded proof of genuine combat strength before offering allegiance. Challenging Diljuk to a duel, Balak showed a rare trace of satisfaction on his weathered face, clearly impressed that his opening strike had been deflected. Hearing the demand for a duel, Diljuk froze in place, staring at his challenger in disbelief. Regaining his composure, Diljuk accepted the challenge, gripping his sword with both hands and leveling the tip directly at the veteran. Facing Balak with steady confidence, Diljuk confirmed his readiness as three bear warriors stood frozen in suspense, watching the standoff. Pleased by his resolve, Balak drew his sword once more and leveled it forward, granting the young lord permission to strike first with everything he had. Diljuk sensed a breathtaking aura radiating from the motionless swordsman, as though an immense wellspring of energy poured directly from his body. Without consulting his status window, Diljuk felt his own strength surge as a matching glow began to envelop him. Balak chuckled upon seeing how quickly Diljuk channeled chi, recognizing it as the mark of a true master of ancient summoning. Having never encountered the concept of kanchi before, Diljuk had no idea what it meant. Recognizing the vast gulf in their combat experience, Diljuk knew that holding back for a single second would guarantee his defeat. The three bear tribe spectators watched in tense silence, a mixture of anxiety and simmering anger brewing among them. Adjusting his stance to brace for the clash, Diljuk tightened his two-handed grip on the hilt and lunged forward with explosive speed. Balak extended his sword arm to parry the strike, the blades grinding against each other with a screeching clash as both combatants tested each other's leverage. Breaking the lock, both fighters knocked their blades aside to reset, the veteran keeping his unblinking gaze locked onto Diljuk. Diljuk pressed the offensive without hesitation, his radiant aura swelling in power as his focused chi surged to envelop his entire body in fierce combat. Under the relentless pressure, Balak began to struggle, his brow furrowing in deep tension as he strained to deflect the incoming assault. Sensing his opponent falter under the onslaught, Diljuk recognized the opening and committed to a decisive finishing strike. Channeling the Rebello-style technique, cutting the starry shadow, Diljuk kicked off the earth and surged forward with blinding speed to deliver a decisive slash, flashing past without slowing down. Diljuk ended up directly behind Balak, both standing back to back for a breathless heartbeat. Neither warrior moved nor lowered their blade, making it look as though the strike had cleanly missed. Moments later, Balak dropped to one knee with a heavy thud, his sword slipping from his grasp as he braced a hand against the dirt. Despite his clear defeat, the veteran smiled and tilted his head toward Diljuk, who remained standing motionless in his follow-through. Balak praised the clean strike, prompting Diljuk to turn in surprise. Diljuk stared in utter astonishment as the legendary ancient spirit bowed deeply before him, conceding defeat and formally pledging allegiance to his young master. Flustered and deeply embarrassed by the sudden deference, Diljuk raised his hands defensively and urged the veteran swordsman to rise from his knees. Looking up with a broad grin, Balak praised Diljuk, remarking that his battle chi was truly remarkable. When Diljuk asked what chi meant, Balak realized the discipline had been lost to history, as the trio of bear sentries continued watching in silence. Balak explained that chi is a distinct discipline from magic, enhancing physical capabilities and allowing a warrior to master any weapon. Understanding dawned on Diljuk regarding his earlier surge of power, but Balak noted that the young master possessed a distinct variation of Shia, describing his energy as steadfast chi. Balak prompted a confused Diljuk to ask what that meant. Trained chi is split into steadfast and soft forms, one for slaying monsters and the other for subduing foes, and Diljuk radiated pure steadfast energy. Balak's memory, such steadfast chi was once wielded by the legendary berserker Zerk. Hearing the name of the legendary berserker swordsman, Diljuk stared back in awe. Balak explains that the berserker Zark was his disciple who surpassed him in strength, never expecting to meet someone like him again after all these years. Scratching his head in embarrassment, Diljuk wonders if he could ever match such a formidable berserker, but the veteran smiles at his humble humble nature. Pressing a hand to his midsection, Balek bows low before Diljuk, offering his blade and obedience whenever battles arise. Watching the quiet conversation from the sidelines, a long-haired warrior of the bear tribe approaches them, stepping forward to ask if this summoned spirit is truly the legendary Balek. Placing a hand over his chest, the dark-haired warrior boldly asks for instruction for his men, standing firm as Diljuk watches in astonished silence. He recalls that anyone can master chi through rigorous discipline, and though they might never reach perfection, they yearn to aid Diljuk. Rubbing his chin in thought, Balek notes that the bear tribe once bred mighty warriors, yet the recruits before him look unpolished, making the warrior grimace. Stepping up behind the spirit, Diljuk eagerly endorses their request, pleased by their burning resolve. With a begrudging grimace, the old master relents, admitting he cannot deny a direct request from his summoner. A stern warning follows that his regime is merciless, but the dark-haired beastman brushes the threat aside, thanking Balek for taking them on. Watching them shake on it, Diljuk smiles warmly, pleased that the matter reached such a swift agreement. Carrot Sandy slips in quietly from behind, startled to find Balek present. Diljuk turns to greet her just as the swordmaster steps aside to discuss upcoming drills with the bear warrior. Recognizing that combat drills have begun, she notes their pending fortress project, prompting Diljuk to apologize for the shortage of hands. Reassuring her, Diljuk promises that all remaining villagers will assist her construction in full. Waving off his concern, the skilled hunter urges him to rely on her expertise, having already devised a meticulous blueprint. She eagerly anticipates the day when her finished fortress stands guarded by the bear tribe, whose strength will soar once Balek hones their chi. Nodding in complete agreement, Diljuk shares her anticipation as morning sunlight breaks across the clouds, bathing the newly erected village perimeter in gold. Days later, across the rugged coastal reaches of Tenma, dense green forests blanket the rolling hills beside the open sea. Under Balek's relentless gaze, the beastmen drill their strikes in tireless repetition, driven by his barked commands that a powerful frame must forge chi through blistering speed. Approaching the training grounds, Diljuk smiles at the sheer dedication pouring into every single blow. Catching sight of him, Balek warmly greets his master, asking if he is out patrolling this sector. Explaining that the expanded borders require personal inspection, Diljuk earns a nod of firm approval from the veteran spirit. Turning back to his recruits with a stern glare, Balek reports steady progress, advising Diljuk to proceed without worry on his patrol route. Bellowing for another 100 repetitions, the instructor drives them hard, drawing a sympathetic yet wry chuckle from Diljuk as he observes the grueling pace. Taking his leave to press forward along the border, Diljuk receives a parting warning from Balek to stay alert. Striding down the wooded path, Diljuk stays watchful, mindful of ferocious beasts roaming these wild frontiers. Lawless outlaws infest the coast because the crown holds no authority over Tenma, reminding him of their past clash where Syndicine narrowly escaped grave harm. Tightening his grip on his hilt, he heightens his caution just as a sea breeze sweeps across his brow, tossing strands of hair over one eye. Gusts roll in off the vast ocean, where shimmering sunlight dances across the waves to reveal a breathtaking coastal panorama. Diljuk murmurs in genuine awe at the stunning expanse. Advancing toward the rocky shoreline, he spots a weathered wooden pier jutting out beside a secluded cove. Navigating the jagged rocks and slopes, Diljuk approaches the secluded pier and catches sight of a vessel hidden behind a massive crag. A flash of cold steel cuts through his vision, freezing him in place. Three armed men surround Diljuk from all sides, leveling sharp spears and blades directly at his throat. The hidden vessel proves to be a formidable pirate vessel, finely crafted yet bearing tattered, storm-battered sails across its masts. From its mainmast hangs a black flag emblazoned with a coiled dragon beneath an ominous skull. Standing face to face with him, a blonde pirate demands his identity as a suffocating tension settles over the cove. Without a shred of fear, Diljuk Rebello introduces himself as the new lord of these lands, fixing an unyielding stare on the blonde man to demand their identities. The young, powerfully built captain scoffs that terrestrial lords hold no sway over the sea, his fierce expression darkening with deep resentment. Mocking the burdens of lordship, the leader identifies his crew as the pterodactyls, claiming this hidden coast as their sovereign haven. Hearing them claim the mantle of pirates, Diljuk freezes, having failed to link their skull flag to actual ocean bandits, crouching close. A second pirate presses his spear point right against Diljak's face, warning him not to twitch with the smug arrogance of an assured victor. Focusing on the gleaming spearhead, Diljuk snatches the iron tip with the bracer forged by Devato, channeling a radiant surge of mana throughout his frame. Shocked, the bandit recoils and gasps at the sudden grab. With a single clench of his bare fingers, Diljuk shatters the heavy wooden shaft in two. Left clutching a useless splintered stump, the pirate screams in utter terror at the raw physical display. Panicking behind his black bandana, the third outlaw lunges forward to slash Diljuk down, snaring the man's sword arm in an iron grip. Diljuk yanks him forward and disarms him with a sharp palm strike to the wrist. Staring at his throbbing empty hand, the rattled bandit stumbles backward in a torrent of curses. Blonde leader grits his teeth in rage, cursing the intruder as a wretched Red Crown official, gripping his hilt with both hands. The captain charges forward, shouting for the meddling noble to back off, refusing to let the blade reach him. Diljuk draws his own steel with lightning speed, sending the captain's weapon clattering to the dirt. Frozen in terror around Diljuk, the youngest pirate frantically pleads with his blonde captain for orders, dreading a return to the city in heavy iron chains. Spitting insults at the nobleman, the captain accuses him of destroying their hard-won sanctuary, panic bleeding into his strained voice. Seeing the fury in their eyes, Diljuk realizes that mere words cannot resolve this heated standoff. Drawing a backup blade, the desperate captain levels the steel at Diljuk, refusing to surrender. Recognizing the clash is inevitable, Diljuk springs into the air, enveloped in an explosive corona of magical energy. The stunned captain gasps at his flight as Diljuk weaves the intricate arts of the Rebello style, swirling mana around his frame. Howling gale force winds batter the pirate's vision, leaving him completely blind and defenseless against the surging atmospheric pressure. Poised to strike, Diljuk lowers his blade, raises an open palm toward the sky, and summons Hakuryu into the fray. Hakuryu materializes with a thunderous flap of wings, soaring overhead as the terrified corsairs gaze up at the spiked white dragon. Mounted firmly upon the dragon's broad back, Diljuk looks down from the heavens over the cowering brigands. All three pirates gawk open-mouthed at the ancient beast hovering majestically above them. The captain's eyes dilate in disbelief, murmuring whether this legendary creature could truly be real. Reaching a trembling hand toward the mythical beast, the captain hangs his head in total defeat, confessing that no mortal could ever best a dragon. Seated composedly atop Hakuryu, Diljuk looks down as the pirate in the center collapses to his knees with a heavy thud, awaiting execution. Surprised by the sudden surrender, Diljuk frowns as the corsairs abandon all intention of fighting. Leaping down from Hakuryu to the sand, Diljuk crouches beside the kneeling man with an approachable smile, inviting him to share his true story. Sitting together in a tense circle, the outlaw casts his eyes downward, recounting how their journey into piracy began with a desperate flight from the city. He recounts how cruel nobles forced them into brutal manual labor, beating them relentlessly as they hauled timber, heavy sacks, and filth. Others among them were forced into bloodsport arenas to fight for coin, trading blows before roaring crowds of wealthy spectators. Driven by survival, the trio fled the city with whatever meager supplies they could carry to escape that hell. Recalling the golden dawn over the sandy coast after endless wanderings, he explains how finding the sea offered them their first taste of peace. The sea became their sanctuary as his crew listens in hushed silence, allowing Diljuk to understand why these men would fight to the death to avoid capture. Curious, Diljuk asks why the sight of Hakuryu made him drop his blade, prompting the captain to look toward the dragon. The man explains that back during their harsh labor in the city, an old companion used to recount legendary tales of dragons. Those mythic tales spoke of an ancient era when dragons soared, depicting a harmonious world free from hunger and cruel discrimination that deeply captivated the weary laborers. Hearing mention of the legendary era, Diljuk shudders as he realizes they are describing the ancient civilization of Tenma. They sailed to sea seeking freedom under that dragon emblem, yet the captain bitterly admits those dreams were mere fairy tales against reality. Harsh reality offered no true peace, forcing them to steal from the wealthy just to stay alive on the waves. Frowning deeply, Diljuk realizes these pirates suffered that exact same oppression. Rage overtakes Dodoria as he recounts their past, clenching his fist and declaring that their raids were payback for years of brutal humiliation. Objecting firmly, Diljuk counters that past misery cannot excuse theft, warning that they will never escape accountability so easily. Dodoria merely smirks at the noble's stubborn resolve, boasting that he and his crew possess the cunning to slip out of any trap or prison. Rising to his feet, Diljuk catches the pirates completely off guard, asking if they would strike a deal with Tenma, leaving the captain staring in wide-eyed shock. Hiring these sea outlaws for his own village is his goal, leaving all three pirates stunned. With a confident smile, Diljuk offers steady wages and homes in exchange for their grueling labor and unmatched knowledge of the ocean. Dodoria warily agrees to share their maritime expertise, yet presses to know why the Lord even seeks ocean lore in the first place. Recalling their earlier words, Diljuk notes that if they meant what they said, they all share the exact same dream. The captain furrows his brow, demanding to know what kind of dream they could share. Tenma once thrived in that legendary lost era, and Diljuk explains that his ultimate mission is to bring it back to life. Dodoria shouts in disbelief, calling the restoration of that era outright impossible today, yet Diljuk only offers an unwavering, confident smile in response. Clenching his fist, the Lord declares that his summoning magic calls forth ancient beings capable of restoring that glorious age, extending his open hand. Diljuk asks once more if the pirates will lend their strength to his cause. Dodoria stares at the outstretched hand in sheer shock, freezing motionless on the spot. Instead of punishing them, Diljuk offered genuine partnership, leaving the pirate captain gazing at him in awe. Remembering a lifetime of relentless abuse and seeing this noble offer genuine respect, Dodoria clenches his fist in quiet resolve. Exchanging glances, the crew prepares to settle on their decision. Pushing up from his knees to stand tall, the captain recalls the name Diljuk offered when they met. Reaching out his hand with fierce resolve, Dodoria asks if Diljuk will accept his crew's full assistance. Stunned by this sudden pledge, Diljuk listens as Dodoria boldly confesses that they too long to witness that golden era reborn. Grasping his hand in a firm grip, Diljuk affirms his complete trust in the pirates, sealing their newfound alliance on the spot. Both leaders lock eyes during their firm handshake as the two crewmates look on with broad smiles. Days pass, and the reformed pirates faithfully return every single stolen item. True to their word, they chart out the sea and mark every vital ocean route on the map. Their nautical expertise proves invaluable, charting rich fishing grounds and maritime hazards. Soon the crew delivers an astonishing surprise, drawing a massive crowd of villagers to gather along the seaside pier. A magnificent vessel floats upon the water before Diljuk, prompting Cindy to raise clenched fists to her face in delight. When Diljuk asks if this craft belongs to the domain, Dodoria proudly confirms that Tenma's new flagship fishing vessel stands ready. Spotting the Rebello family crest of a crescent moon and dragon emblazoned on the flag, Diljuk wonders how the crew pulled off such fine craftsmanship. Offering warm thanks to Captain Dodoria, Diljuk prompts the bashful sailor to admit a pirate banner hardly fits an honest fleet. Alice beams with sheer joy, envisioning mountain-sized catches and praising the marvelous vessel like a dream come true. Hearing her excitement, Diljuk immediately proposes setting out on a maiden voyage. Stepping forward from the dock, Dodoria's crewmate announces that he is lowering the boarding ladder. Boarding the grand deck at last, Diljuk rests against the wooden railing and relishes the refreshing ocean breeze. Cindy adjusts her hair by the rail, watching Diljuk as a cheerful Alice and the dwarf Devato chat with a bear tribe warrior across the deck. Dodoria grips the helm and shouts spirited commands to his sailors who haul the rigging to unfurl the towering sails across the masts, announcing their departure. The captain cuts the hull through gentle swells under his crew's watchful gaze. Sunlight bathes the vessel in a warm blessing as the three crewmates turn to check reactions, met with confident cheers and bright smiles from Diljuk and his companions. The sea calms, letting the vessel glide across the water with steady grace. Cindy and Alice lean over the railing to admire the blue water as Dodoria watches them with quiet suspicion. Turning to his mates, the captain asks if those young women are the ancient spirits, and his men nod in agreement. Dodoria eyes Diljuk, mindful never to take such legendary summoning lightly, just as Cindy approaches the crew with a polite apology for interrupting. Asking if they will fish the open sea, Cindy receives Dodoria's eager confirmation, though he advises sailing further out for optimal conditions as she smiles in thanks. Embarrassed, Dodoria insists she owe former criminals no courtesy, but Cindy reacts with surprise, noting their good behavior has already earned them respect. Gazing down at the deck, Dodoria admits his crew has never experienced equal treatment from anyone. Touched by his raw confession, Cindy closes her eyes with a warm, compassionate smile. Facing the sailors, she reassures them that in Tenma, fair and equal treatment is the standard. Cindy explains that her master strives to build a haven where every single resident finds genuine happiness without exception. Moved by her sincerity, the pirates break into heartfelt smiles, and as Cindy returns to the rail, Dodoria loudly rallies his crew to bring home a massive catch for Tenma. Cindy turns to Diljuk, pulling him from his thoughts to ask if he senses anything, to which he notes that tracking schools of fish is no different from detecting monsters. Closing his eyes, Diljuk focuses his magical senses deep beneath the ocean swells to scan the abyssal waters. Snapping his eyes open, Diljuk points toward the depths below, signaling a massive shoal as Cindy claps in sheer admiration. Approaching Cindy, Devato reports that the specialized magical device stands ready for deployment. Presenting the enchanted gear, Cindy reveals an automatic capture net designed to snap shut the instant prey enters. Explaining that she enlarged the net for massive hauls, she beams at Diljak's delighted gratitude, blushing as she pledges her total devotion to his needs. Turning around to cast the net, Cindy is startled to find Alice already tossing it overboard, offering a hasty apology that her cooking appetite could wait no longer. Cindy chuckles at Alice's culinary obsession and steps forward to help haul the ropes as laughter echoes across the deck. As they lower the enchanted net, wishing for a bountiful haul, Diljak's expression stiffens upon detecting a menacing mana signature. Spinning toward the girls, Diljuk yells for them to halt immediately. An eerie rumble reaches Alice's ears, filling her eyes with growing dread at the unknown noise. To their horror, the enchanted netting snaps in half and plunges into the dark oceanic depths. Sensing danger below, Diljuk warns that something lurks beneath the hull, making Dodoria stiffen with grim suspicion. A colossal sea leviathan erupts from the waves, bearing a wicked brow horn, mane of bristle, and gaping jaws bristling with razor fangs. Fear grips Diljuk as his pupils contract sharply, staring up at the terrifying monstrosity with parted lips. Earlier that day, Diljuk scouted the coastal shoreline annexed under Tenma's territory. Dodoria and his hostile pirate crew ambushed him there with weapons drawn. Their shared longing for the legendary ancient civilization forged a pact of cooperation for Tenma's future. Equipped with the sturdy vessel provided by the reformed pirates, the party ventured into the open sea for their maiden fishing fishing expedition. Terrified, Cindy and Alice look to Diljuk for commands as he stares over the gunwale, stunned by this monstrous deep-sea encounter. Rearing out of the surf, the beast lets out a deafening shriek, flashing its jagged fangs before surging in a violent charge directly at the hull. The violent collision rocks the vessel sideways, leaving Diljuk and Cindy struggling to keep their footing on the tilting deck. Clinging to the mast, Dodoria shouts to Diljuk that this is Todosir, a legendary sea devil infamous for shattering entire hulls with its horn. Todosir prepares for another devastating charge, forcing Diljuk to realize he must draw the beast far away from the fragile ship immediately. Knowing an open clash on the water will destroy the vessel, Diljuk raises his hand to enact his summoning skill and calls forth Hakuryu. The majestic white dragon materializes above the waves, drawing Todosir's furious gaze away from the vulnerable ship. Shock washes over the pirate crew at Hakuryu's arrival, and Dodoria instantly recognizes the dragon from their first clash. Hakuryu swoops low so Diljuk can grip his scales, vaulting the lord high into the clouds as Diljuk draws his blade to lead the monster away. Cindy grips the railing with a furrowed brow, questioning his reckless plan. Hakuryu banks away from the vessel as Diljuk roars at Todosir to pursue them into open waters. As Todosir surges toward them, Diljuk shouts to Cindy that he will handle the beast alone, and she realizes he is deliberately drawing it away from the ship to protect the crew. Watching the Leviathan chase him across the waves, Diljuk calculates that he can drag the threat even further from his allies. He calls out to Hakuryu, asking to skim the water, and the white dragon gladly complies. Hakuryu dives in a swift descent as Todosir braces for battle, met by Diljuk leveling his blade as a strange radiant aura envelops him. Cindy senses this power is no ordinary spellcraft, and Diljuk silently confirms her suspicion, channeling pure chi through his blade. Closing within a single meter of Todosir, he thrusts his sword forward in an exact strike, infusing the beast with his chi. Diljuk watches a shimmering glow spread across Todosir's massive body. Aboard the ship, Cindy tracks his every move with an anxious frown. Alice and the bear wait on edge, and Dodoria stands frozen beside his motionless crew. Diljuk keeps his sword leveled at the Titan with a focused gaze, holding steady until a deep growl escapes the beast. The monster falls quiet and bows in total submission, prompting Diljuk to lower his weapon. Todosir blinks with gentle, affectionate eyes and emits a playful COO, bringing a relieved smile to Diljak's face. Relief washes over the girls as they fawn over the docile monster, leaving Dodoria completely baffled in the background. Hakuryu praises the skillful use of soft chi, gently patting Todosir and urging him to stay out of trouble, which earns an obedient chirp. Stepping back onto the deck, Diljuk is instantly met by Cindy, demanding he never scare them like that again. So he apologizes for acting without time to explain. Dodoria approaches in utter shock that they subdued the legendary Lord of the Sea, Todosir, without breaking a sweat, but Diljuk credits the feat to his chi. The bear chimes in that his master taught him of this art, recognizing Diljak's rare talent, and Alice heaps praise on him until Cindy shouts that she meant to say it first. Davado, the dwarf, steps up to report that Cindy already finished repairing the net, prompting Diljuk to thank her warmly. Turning to the whole crew, Diljuk cheerfully proclaims the start of their fishing run, igniting an uproar of excitement. Hauling up the massive net alongside Cindy and the bear, Diljuk reveals a colossal catch that far exceeds their hopes, sending Alice into pure joy. Cindy jumps for joy beside a pleased Diljuk, leaving Dodoria's pirate crew completely awestruck by the sheer volume of their haul. Before long, the vessel docks at the pier, carrying a massive haul secured inside specialized storage containers. Rows of prized fish hang strung across poles along the prow, and Diljuk clenches his fists in satisfaction at their spectacular haul. Alice clasps her hands in delight over the seafood mountain, already daydreaming of all the gourmet dishes she can prepare. Skipping between Dodoria and Cindy, Alice praises the pirate captain for his sea navigation and commends the alchemist for her brilliant magical tools. One of Dodoria's crew inspects a colossal fish and questions if anyone could actually eat such a beast, prompting Alice to glare at him in total outrage. Clenching her fists, Alice fumes at the absurd realization that people of this modern era have never eaten tuna. When Diljuk confesses that he has never tasted tuna either, an outraged Alice resolves to teach these culinary heathens the sublime flavor of this delicacy. A determined spark blazes in Alice's eyes as she promises everyone an unforgettable feast. Tying on an apron and drawing her chef's knife, Alice cleaves the giant tuna straight down the center with effortless, breathtaking precision. Diljuk marvels at how fast Alice handles the massive fish, prompting Cindy to praise her flawless mastery of seafood prep. Presenting the artfully arranged platters to the group, Alice smiles and thanks them for their patience. Savoring the presentation, Diljuk praises the appetizing spread, and Cindy notes the exquisite slicing and heavenly aroma that awaken fond memories of the ancient era. Flushed with pride, Alice reveals the mountain of succulent meat, prompting Diljuk to invite everyone to feast right there on the ship's deck. The bear steps over to pour wine into glasses as Davado the dwarf distributes plates across the table. Rich vintage fills each glass with a rhythmic, bubbling trickle. Cindy clasps her hands to invite everyone to dig in, and Diljuk Diljuk follows up by wishing the whole table bon appetit. Spearing a tender cut with his fork, Diljuk places it in his mouth and marvels in pure delight at how succulent and juicy this tuna truly is. Alice beams, explaining that her magic cooking elevates any catch and urges Diljuk to sample the sashimi with a pinch of pure salt. She credits Diljuk for producing the salt, but he clarifies he was only applying Cindy's alchemy. Cindy relishes her portion without surprise at its perfection, and Diljuk turns his attention toward the rest of the crew as his friends feast. Extending a warm invitation, Diljuk asks Dodoria and his men to join the meal, but the captain hesitates, questioning if pirates belong at their table. Offering an understanding smile, Diljuk reassures Dodoria that there's nothing wrong with dining together. Watching Cindy smile, he points out that everyone here was born into completely different eras. Gesturing toward Devado and the bear, he notes their different races before glancing at Alice serving platters in both hands. Reassuring the crew, Diljuk explains that all souls in Tenma are equal at the common table, urging the former pirates to sit down and taste Alice's culinary triumph. Dodoria takes up a fork with trembling hands, thanks Diljuk, and tastes the savory meat, only for silent droplets to begin splashing across his knuckles. Tears stream down Dodoria's face as he admits this food tastes far sweeter than anything they ever stole, and his crew gorges on the fish with uncontainable emotion. Dodoria reflects on how briefly he has known Diljuk, yet expresses deep gratitude for their meeting, which Diljuk warmly reciprocates. Raising a bottle of wine to toast their alliance, the captain beams, and Diljuk gestures toward the sky, announcing that one more friend wants to join. Hakuryu descends majestically from the sky to the cheers of the company, bringing broad smiles to the crew even as Dodoria flinches in momentary fright. The great white dragon touches down on the ship as everyone gathers around to pet and embrace him, and Diljuk watches the scene with a contented smile. Dodoria and his pirate crew climb aboard Hakuryu's broad back for a gentle ride, warming the hearts of the onlookers on deck with their sheer wonder. Diljuk breaks into hearty laughter, and Dodoria's crew catches the infectious joy, roaring in unison across the deck. Over the following days, Diljuk oversees the rapid construction and development of a new port along the coast of Tenma. Dodoria and Cindy study coastal maps at the harbor as Diljuk trains, and upon Diljuk noting that the pier needs overhaul, the captain apologizes for the shoddy woodwork. Surveying the dense trees and rocky cliffs, Diljuk notes that he must consult Carrot Sandy regarding perimeter defenses. A faint rustle in the thicket catches Diljak's eye, taking him by surprise since he senses absolutely no mana radiating from the foliage. Diljuk alerts his companions that someone is lurking in the brush, breaking their concentration and drawing their startled focus. Approaching the brush with guarded steps, Diljuk spots a bushy tail protruding from the foliage, swaying rhythmically back and forth. Young Beastman girl with animal ears leaps from the thicket once discovered, warning Diljuk to stay back and branding him a minion of Rosas. Her hostile entrance startles the group as Dodoria tries to make sense of it. Cindy stares in confusion, and Diljuk asks who she is. Stepping forward, Diljuk confronts the animal-eared girl in the clearing, met by her fierce and unabashed hostility. He presses the girl for her name as Dodoria and Cindy stand vigilantly behind him, watching the standoff. The girl shrieks in defiance, commanding Diljuk to keep his distance and reviling him as a vile human. Outstretching her hand in fury at the human intruders, she transforms her fingers into razor-sharp beast claws. Dodoria recoils in shock at the transformation, noting he has seen such beast magic only once before, and Diljuk recognizes her as a canine demi-human. The girl snaps back, warning him not to speak of her brethren and calling him a Rosas henchman, leaving Diljuk stunned as he searches his memory about the city. Cindy recalls that Rosas is the nearby settlement, and Diljuk agrees, suspecting that some disaster has struck the neighboring city. Hoping to clarify the situation, he asks for details and introduces himself as Diljuk Rebello, Lord of Tenma. Gesturing toward the vessel's flag, Diljuk highlights that their crest bears no resemblance to the banner of Rosas. The girl shrieks at him to shut up, declaring all humans to be mortal enemies and swearing she will never forgive them for burning down her home. Gravely alarmed by her words, Diljuk deduces that her home was razed by attackers and extends a calm hand to ask what transpired in Rosas. Refusing to converse with humans, the girl declares that Hakuro alone will pass judgment, turning her back on Diljuk. She bolts across the brush in rapid leaps, leaving Diljuk standing in place as he calmly tracks her retreat. Dodoria watches the girl vanish into the trees, and Cindy turns anxiously to Diljuk as he rests his hand against his chin to ponder her words. Remembering that Octo Higgins now governs Rosas, Diljuk recognizes the grave peril of ignoring these hostilities. Turning to his companions, Diljuk explains that they must uncover what is happening around Tenma, proposing to track the Beastman girl, and Cindy agrees to come along. Dodoria grimaces and urges an immediate strike against Rosas, but Diljuk refuses to give their enemies an excuse for war, proposing a discreet reconnaissance scout instead. Recalling the sheer anger etched into the girl's face, Diljuk recognizes that the crisis in the forest runs deeper than simple hostility. He motions for Cindy and Dodoria to advance into the woods, and both companions follow closely behind. Mounting Hakuryu's broad back, they soar high above the sprawling forest canopy, scanning the ground below. Dodoria asks where the Beast Girls people dwell, and Diljuk turns to confirm they live deep within the White Wolf Forest. This woodland stretches across both Tenma and Rosas, leaving an ungoverned borderland where countless beastmen carved out a sanctuary. A massive, empty clearing among the trees catches Diljak's eye, prompting a grim frown as he points ahead toward the edge of Tenma. Touching down on the ruined earth, the party surveys the clearing, leaving Diljuk at a complete loss for words as he stares at the aftermath. Shattered homes, scorched timbers, wounded beastmen, and the young wolf girl fill his view. Cindy covers her face in horror at the gruesome sight. Dodoria grimly notes that everything was burned to ash, and Diljak's expression turns deadly cold. The wolf girl whips around glaring as she asks if they tracked her down. Stepping forward cautiously, Diljuk offers an apology and asks what transpired, prompting her to clarify that regular Rosas citizens were not to blame. Glancing toward a weeping orphan and a child huddled beside an injured parent, Coral asks if they truly want to hear what humans did to her people. Frowning, Coral reveals the nightmare began right after Lord Rosa was ousted, instantly putting Diljuk on high alert with rising suspicion. Few beasts ever troubled the White Wolf Forest, allowing tribes of demi-humans to thrive in peace and safety. Rosas emissaries arrived bearing bribes and rations, promising that submission to Octo would spare their lives in ancestral territory. Octo made the grim consequences of defiance painfully clear, prompting the Beastman chief to wave his hand in reluctant concession to the shock of his clan. Her father signed the agreement as settlement chief to protect them, yet that single signature opened the gates to an unrelenting hell. Memories flash back to a Beastman warrior dragged away in chains despite his frantic struggle. Spears pinned the captive before Octo demanded all able men be shipped off to his brutal factories. Turning to the terrified crowd, Octo demanded that tribal women be surrendered to his soldiers, striking sheer dread into every heart. Demanding even more, Octo decreed that the villagers must deliver crushing tributes to his city every single week. Proclaiming himself their supreme god and king, Octo revoked all religious freedom, leaving the devout tribe stunned and horrified. Fixating on their sacred shrine, Octo commanded Hakuro's wolf effigies destroyed on pain of death, sparking desperate cries from tribesmen guided by Hakuro for generations. Desperate to save their deity, the settlement chief dropped to Octo's feet, pleading to spare the statue. Reliving the nightmare, Coral bares her fangs in mounting fury, clenching her trembling fists as anger consumes her. Pointing back at the charred rubble, she reveals that the thugs from Rosas burned everything down anyway. Furious disbelief tightens across Dodoria and Diljak's faces beside an emotional Cindy as Coral breaks into bitter tears and demands to know what her kin did to earn this misery. Pressing for an answer through broken sobs, Coral asks what evil her parents ever committed, slowly steadying her breath as her knuckles tighten into fists. Seeing her anguish, Diljuk gently asks where her parents are right now. Coral admits she has no idea if they survived, having been dragged away toward Rosas just before the slaughter began, grasping her hands tight. Coral adds that her friends vanished as well, enraging Dodoria and Cindy as Diljuk realizes the nightmare runs far deeper than feared. Octo discarded innocent lives purely to indulge his own sadistic whims, perfectly matching the tyrant's true colors. Recognizing Octo is capable of boundless atrocities, Diljuk refuses to let the monster run unchecked and commits to saving every surviving victim. Softening his tone, Diljuk asks if she will come to Tenma with them, only for Coral to bristle in anger and demand what his offer really means. Clutching her chest, Coral asks if he truly expects her to enter a human village, shocked that he assumes she could trust him. Instead of arguing, Diljuk tells her that she has no reason to trust him yet, catching the defensive girl completely off guard. Reading the sincerity in Diljak's steady gaze, Coral listens as he warns that lingering among these smoldering ruins with wounded survivors spells certain doom. Standing before the ashes of her home, Coral clenches her fists to protest, though palpable fear flickers across her wounded eyes. A frail voice calls Coral's name from behind, drawing her gaze to an elderly beast man extending his trembling hand in her direction. Rushing to his side with a cry of grandfather, she kneels by the collapsed elder as he urges Coral to heed Diljak's counsel. Exhaustion has pushed their clan past the breaking point, and he insists Diljuk can offer true aid. Noticing Coral's distress, the elder explains that all surviving beastmen should relocate to Tenma. Her grandfather recalls how Coral scavenged food alone, scouring perilous lands to find a quiet refuge. Praising her tireless bravery, the elder brings a fresh flood of tears streaming down Coral's face. Summoning the last of his strength to sit up, the elder implores Coral to set pride aside so their people can survive. Wiping away her tears in heavy silence, Coral turns back to Diljuk and agrees to accept his sanctuary. Flashing a guarded glare, Coral warns that demi-humans will not blindly trust them, admitting she refuses to feign false loyalty when sheer survival forces her hand, lowering his gaze with a gentle smile. Diljuk assures her that he completely understands, explaining that Octo banished him from his ancestral home as well. Diljuk can truly understand the burning rage and sorrow weighing on Coral's soul, expressing that his sole desire is keeping keeping her clan alive, Diljuk brings Coral to fresh tears as she clutches her clothes and nods in quiet agreement. Guiding the surviving beastmen across the border, Coral stops before the great gates to announce that Tenma lies right before them. Spotting Diljuk's companions, Coral pauses in amazement at the bear tribe warrior and the dwarf, confirming demi-humans live here freely. Cindy steps up with a bright smile, explaining that all races cooperate and share life together in Tenma. Her eyes widen in shock, but the elder confirms Cindy speaks the truth, promising their faith and traditions will remain completely free. Reaching into her pouch, Coral pulls out a small statuette representing Hakuro's will. Stepping closer with an outstretched hand, Diljuk confirms her words as Coral extends the sacred effigy, watching her closely. Diljuk listens as Coral sadly explains this idol is the sole surviving relic. Deep cracks run across the surface of the battered figurine, revealing its fragile state. Inspecting the carved relic, Diljuk recognizes from how closely Coral clutches it to her chest that this statuette embodies the sacred pride of her tribe. A warm smile touches Diljuk's face as he offers to repair the broken heirloom if she will allow him. Coral lifts her tearful eyes with a glimmer of hope, asking if he truly possesses the skill to mend it. Cindy chimes in to guarantee Diljuk's mastery and encourages her to trust him, leaving Diljuk and Coral locked in a quiet, mutual gaze. Surrendering the statuette to his care, Coral watches in awe as Diljuk channels ancient alchemy, smoothing away every jagged crack until the idol gleams whole. Astonished by the miracle, Coral clutches the restored image of Hakuro with joyful tears, proclaiming it the unbroken pride of her people. Reassuring Coral, Diljuk promises that this restoration is only the start of their ongoing help. Returning the sacred idol under the warm gazes of Cindy and Dodoria, Diljuk watches Coral reach out as her relieved kin offer heartfelt cheers, passing the relic directly into her hands. Diljuk holds it steady until Coral's fingers grasp it securely. Fresh tears well up as Coral addresses Diljuk with deep reverence, earning a humble smile from the young lord. Holding the relic close, Coral overcomes her hesitation to voice her heartfelt gratitude. Coral confers with her kin as Diljuk watches in silence, mindful that providing temporary shelter does not solve the root of their oppression. Facing the rising wind, Diljuk swears a solemn oath to bring Octo's reign of terror to an absolute end. Dawn breaks the following day as Diljuk knocks and enters the hall, warmly greeting the gathered beastmen, Devato the dwarf, and Alice as she serves a fresh feast. The room brightens immediately, returning his morning greeting with enthusiastic cheers. A bright smile crosses Diljuk's face in return, glad to see the beastmen looking so lively and refreshed. Several days have passed since their arrival, allowing the beastmen to comfortably adapt to life in Tenma. Inquiring after a beastman woman's wounded arm, Diljuk feels relieved when she credits his healing potion for her swift recovery. Asking after Coral's whereabouts, Diljuk pauses as both of them notice a fluffy wolf tail flicking just around the corridor corner. Kneeling before a low altar with hands clasped in fervent devotion, Coral beseeches the deity Hakuro to protect her captive parents as Diljuk watches quietly. Though these refugees found safety in Tenma, they still mourn stolen homes and captured kin, hardening Diljak's resolve to rescue Coral's parents. Clenching his fist with a sharp, determined glare, Diljuk recognizes that conflict is now unavoidable. Convening inside the command hall, Diljuk steps forward to address the council, surveying the table to ensure every key commander is present. His gaze sweeps from Cindy, Alice, and Dodoria on the right to the bear tribe warrior, Devato, Carrot Sandy, and Balek on the left, resting upon a resolute Coral. Opening the council, Diljuk openly declares war on Rosas, then immediately corrects himself to clarify that they will strike with cool-headed precision. Heavy silence instantly fills the room as the companions struggle to process his bold words. Moments later, Carrot Sandy asks if they strike from this spot, and Balek questions the extreme danger. Diljuk acknowledges the peril, reminding them that Coral's parents remain captive and every second counts. Coral gasps in disbelief that he would risk his own village for her tribe, questioning him once more. Clash was inevitable either way, Diljuk explains, warning that failing to stop Octo Higgins now will invite worse. Slamming his clenched fist onto the table with a stern glare, the Lord vows never to forgive anyone who harms the people of Tenma. Raising his fist before his face, Diljuk pledges to uphold his duty, swearing never to allow Octo Higgins to torment them again. Their reactions diverge. The bear tribe warrior stands stunned, Dodoria grins, and Devato gains absolute faith in the young lord. Carrot Sandy fully backs the plan since her master commanded it. The girls hesitate, and Balek merely nods with an approving smile. Cindy affirms that she stands ready to fight, not merely out of duty as a summoned spirit, recalling his past battles. She proudly testifies that Diljuk has always put his life on the line to defend Tenma. Confidence swells as the alchemist predicts victory, prompting a delighted smile from Diljuk as he warmly speaks her name. Dodoria rallies the crew, the bear and Devato pledge aid to repay past debts, and Hakuryu calls out from above, earning Diljuk's heartfelt thanks. Turning his gaze toward Coral, the Lord declares their decision final, leaving the young beast girl wide-eyed with astonishment. Her shock swiftly melts into a fierce, resolute smile as she gladly pledges pledges to march alongside Diljuk into battle. Deeply grateful to all, Diljuk urges the council to forge an offensive strategy, crossing his arms. Dodoria asks how to proceed without a reckless frontal assault, and Diljuk agrees that a direct invasion carries far too much risk. Coral highlights the real issue. The soldiers of Rosas never stepped across the border. Their settlement stood precisely between Tenma and Rosas, she explains, and Rosas was the one responsible for burning it down. Furious, Dodoria snaps that Tenma's border was scorched as well, predicting Rosas will dismiss the destruction as a natural wildfire. Reflecting on how carefully they avoided entering Rosas, Diljuk suspects Octo-Higgins remains ignorant of the true boundaries and wonders who guided him. Balek proposes flanking from the opposite direction, but Diljuk notes the enemy anticipates that move right before a brilliant scheme sparks in his mind. Securing an undeniable justification to strike is essential, Diljuk remarks, catching Coral off guard. Addressing the entire room, the Lord calls for everyone's unified strength, meeting unanimous nods of agreement. The scene shifts to the borderlands of the White Wolf Forest, where Diljuk crouches to examine the soil until a voice calls out to him. Carrot Sandy announces that preparations are complete, earning warm praise from the young lord. Every wild beast in the area has been steered far away, she adds, drawing pure awe from Cindy. Looking up at Hakuryu soaring across the sky, Diljuk checks the woods and the dragon confirms the perimeter is clear to begin. With everything set, Diljuk rises to his feet and steps before the dense wall of trees. Drawing his blade, Diljuk levels it with a deep exhale, channeling magical power that instantly ignites his mana-storing bracelet. A spiral of searing flames erupts around his drawn blade. Cindy marvels at the massive pool of magic stored inside the bracelet. Diljuk unleashes a massive swing, launching the concentrated blaze forward. The timber ahead instantly incinerates, opening a perfectly straight path. Flames roar into the distance, reducing everything to ash. As the inferno clears, Cindy excitedly shouts that their new road is ready. Diljuk reaffirms his trust in her talents, and she promises never to fail his expectations. Extending her hands forward, Cindy initiates an alchemical transformation, conjuring a glowing pentagram between her palms. Lowering his sword, Diljuk observes the surroundings, satisfied that every phase proceeds on schedule. Approaching footsteps echo through the woods, catching Diljuk's attention before hostile troops emerge from the trees, confirming his suspicions. Two soldiers from Rosas step forward, one demanding why he trespasses on their land, the other promising a gruesome end if he dares attack. Leveling their spears, the guards demand his identity, prompting him to smile and introduce himself as Diljuk Rebello, Lord of Tenma. Stunned by his name, the guards question their ears before concluding the enemy lord attacked them, barking threats of vengeance. Lashing out with a swift thrust, one guard charges forward, but Diljuk effortlessly deflects the spearhead with an effortless parry. Dismissing the guard's bluster as utter nonsense, Diljuk watches him break into a nervous sweat, warning that retaliation awaits them instead. The rattled spearman falls back as his comrade hesitates, shocked to find freshly turned earth beneath their boots. Looking up, the soldier hears Cindy chime in, revealing that this cleared path was created barely 10 minutes ago. Enraged by her mockery, the spearman barks at her to repeat what she just said. She points out that the true border lies behind the trees to his rear, forcing him to glance back in alarm. Cindy explains how fallen timber and thick brush conceal the true boundary. Unbeknownst to them, the soldiers had crossed over and trespassed directly onto Tenma territory, just as Cindy lays out. In plain terms, they stand guilty of invading her lord's territory, leaving the guards mortified as Cindy smirks with satisfaction. Speechless and trapped in their blunder, the soldiers freeze in tense silence. Cursing himself for missing the markings in the dark, the guard quickly hatches a desperate scheme. He sneers that the commotion will draw reinforcements within moments, leaving the intruders doomed. Shouts echo from the thickets as approaching guards search for the source of the noise. A squad of Rosas reinforcements bursts through the thicket, prompting the guard to boast that Diljuk and his allies are finished. Unfazed, Diljuk calls for Carrot Sandy, who adjusts her ribbon, acknowledges the order, and slams her massive warhammer into the ground with explosive sparks. Pleased that everything proceeds on schedule, she leaps high and strikes the earth once more, triggering concealed magical traps beneath the enemy's feet. The jaws snap shut with agonizing shrieks as the soldiers struggle in vain to break free, though Carrot Sandy assures them the binding snares are non-lethal. Cindy compliments the brilliant maneuver from behind, though. Carrot Sandy casually brushes off the praise. Diljuk thanks Carrot Sandy for her assistance, instructing both girls to withdraw safely back to Tenma. Turning toward Coral, he receives a nod as she affirms that was her purpose. Transforming into a wolf, Coral beckons the two girls to mount her back. Cindy and Carrot Sandy marvel at her beast transformation as they climb aboard, holding tight as Coral prepares to sprint away. Entrusting the village's protection to Coral, Diljuk watches them depart as an anxious Cindy keeps gazing back at her lord gradually fading amid the trees. Refocusing ahead, Cindy prays for his victory, vowing to fulfill her own duty. Addressing the writhing soldiers, Diljuk warns that Carrot Sandy's traps will soon fade, giving them one chance to flee. Holding his drawn blade steady, Diljuk makes clear that he seeks no senseless bloodshed. As the magical snares dissolve, most troops flee, yet one defiant spearman stands his ground, daring Diljuk to strike and promising no escape, tightening his grip on the hilt. Diljuk swings his blade using the Rebello style, unleashing a devastating slash called the Fiery Incision of the Full Moon. The explosive shockwave sends the troops scattering with terrified screams, leaving them battered as the blast fades, and they crawl away in terror. A bead of sweat trickles down his brow as Diljuk frowns, noting that the enemy's willingness to fight has crumbled. The two initial scouts remain sprawled on the earth, one groaning at Diljuk's monstrous power and the other questioning its origin. Gazing up at the darkening sky, Diljuk notes that twilight has deepened across the canopy. Recognizing that the routing scouts will quickly summon elite reinforcements, Diljuk looks down, bracing for far deadlier adversaries to arrive next. Extending his sword arm, Diljuk senses a faint tremor in his grip, realizing how much stamina the continuous clashes consumed. A thought strikes him as he reaches into his coat pocket, pulling out the restorative rations Alice prepared specifically for moments like this. He recalls her humble words when handing him the magical dishes, hoping her cooking could aid him even if she lacked frontline combat prowess. As the enchanted food restores his depleted magic, Diljuk sends a silent word of gratitude to Alice. Raising his blade once more, he readies himself for the next wave of enemy soldiers, determined to hold the line and execute his plan. Steeling his resolve to face the oncoming reinforcements alone, his brow furrows with grim focus. A lone warrior emerges from the woods, instantly taking measure of the power Diljuk commands. Stepping from the shadows, the tall, black-haired commander flashes a cruel grin like Octo Higgins, issuing a direct challenge that puts Diljuk on guard. Facing the stranger down, Diljuk demands to know who he is. Sneering in response, the intruder demands Diljuk prove his true skill. The retreating troops look back and hail him as Dalton, gloating that Diljuk cannot defeat him, which confirms Diljuk is facing the lead commander sent from Rosas. Dalton scoffs at how his lord demanded revenge on Diljuk, dismissing the entire grudge as complete foolishness. Hearing Diljuk refer to Octo Higgins with respect, Dalton roars with laughter, mocking his master as a fool who possesses land and wealth but lacks a single brain. Boasting that Octo Higgins dances to his tune, he smirks and asks Diljuk why that is, drawing his heavy morning star. The commander begins swinging the spiked iron ball, mocking Diljuk with a promise to put an end to his life. Diljuk recognizes the morning star and dodges the blow, earning Dalton's praise for his sharp reflexes before the commander warns that the assault has barely begun. Extending his free hand, Dalton declares Diljuk has not witnessed his true combat power yet, putting the hero on high alert for an incoming skill. With a grin, he asks Diljuk if he hears the approaching sound of his defeat. Echoes drift from the woods, but instead of bloodlust, Diljuk senses deep torment from the approaching presence. Paws tread through the underbrush as spear-wielding silhouettes with animal ears step forward beneath the dense trees. Emerging into the clearing, the armed warriors reveal themselves as terrified beastmen clutching their spears. Shocked to see beastmen on the battlefield, Diljuk demands answers, but Dalton smirks and orders his worthless thralls to serve their master, making them tremble in terror. Spotting elves among the captive ranks, Diljuk recognizes the exact nightmare Coral warned him about. Memories return of her explaining that many demi-humans resided in Rosas, along with her terror that they would be brainwashed. Coral had confessed her confusion over such cruelty, and Diljuk had met her pain with grim, solemn silence. Forces from Rosas have evidently overrun the demi-human capital, enslaving everyone inside. Struggling against their orders, one demi-human screams in despair that he refuses to fight, yet his limbs move against his will. Questioned whether a skill commands their bodies, Dalton smirks and confirms it, boasting of its rare power. Dragging a demi-human forward, Dalton points to the cursed control bracelets, explaining that they strip all free will and force absolute obedience to his commands. Mocking them as Diljak's beloved demi-humans, Dalton watches the hero stand firm and tauntingly asks if he has the stomach to cut them down. Retorting that Dalton exploits the innocent for his own gain, Diljuk calls him no different than Octo Higgins. Unforgiving toward tyrants who treat people like objects, Diljuk vows to crush him as the true lord of Tenma. Shoving his captive aside, Dalton scoffs that Diljuk can boast all he likes. Barking commands at his wretched puppets, Dalton orders them to encircle Diljuk and strike together. Warning that his skills go beyond swordplay, Diljuk extends his hand to trigger alchemical transformation, drawing upon the surrounding forest for raw materials. Seeing Diljuk bind a demi-human with alchemy fuels Dalton's fury, yet watching the rest of his army he smiles, knowing the hero cannot bind them all in time. Watching Diljuk struggle on defense without attacking, Dalton assumes the hero has reached his limit and laughs mockingly. Commanded to open fire, the demi-human archers draw their bowstrings taut in unison. Volleys of arrows rain down from every angle, but anticipating the strike, Diljuk swings his blade in a sweeping defensive arc of the Rebello style. Deflected arrows scatter across the ground at Dalton's feet, shocking him with Diljak's defensive swordplay before he orders his archers to draw once more. Declaring their assault futile, Diljuk thrusts his hand forward and activates activates alchemical transformation, raising a massive earthen wall in front of the archers. Enraged by the sudden earthen barrier, Dalton realizes the hero is positioned to attack from a blind spot. Gritting his teeth in frustration as he seeks a counter, Dalton concocts a vile scheme, feigning that he was only joking as Diljuk braces for treachery. Darting behind the captured demi-human chief, Dalton drags him forward as a living shield, forcing Diljuk to freeze in his tracks as he realizes the trap. The chieftain looks drained and resigned to death, prompting Diljuk to demand his release. But Dalton laughs and mocks that the hero is powerless to attack. Dalton mocks the old chieftain as a useful pawn, laughing aloud as Diljuk clenches his teeth in burning anger. The bound demi-humans shout in terror for their chief, alerting Diljuk to the old man's high position. Realizing he is their chief, Diljuk knows this captive must be Coral's father. Delighted by this fortunate connection, Dalton warns Diljuk not to move if he wants the chief to live, trapping the hero in a cruel dilemma. Turning to his forces, Dalton commands them to march on Tenma at once, causing Diljuk to shudder at the threat. Dalton dares him to pursue them to save Tenma, and though Diljuk considers dispatching Hakuryu, a different thought takes hold. Laughing cruelly, Dalton mocks Diljuk Rebello for attempting to save everyone, pointing out that his refusal to abandon anyone is his greatest weakness. A confident smile spreads across Diljak's face as he declares the battle far from over, but Dalton brushes it off as empty bravado. Explaining he already anticipated the assault on Tenma, Diljuk states his only mission here is to stop Dalton. Diljuk adds that Tenma is safeguarded by Cindy Keen, Carrot Sandy, Balek, and Dodoria, picturing their armed strength and unyielding resolve. Full of conviction, Diljuk places absolute faith in his allies, drawing only a contemptuous sneer from Dalton. Slowly regaining consciousness, the chieftain murmurs his daughter's name under his breath as he opens his eyes. Catching sight of Diljuk before him, the chief weakly reaches out, asking if his daughter is unharmed. Diljuk assures him Coral is safe, recounting the solemn promise he made to return her family to her. A flicker of hope transforms the chief's gaze as he clenches his fist to his chest in disbelief. Grasping him from behind, Dalton snaps that the demi-humans will serve as his shields until death, channeling dark magic directly into the chief's mind. Screaming in agony as the bracelet bites into his flesh, the chief loses control of his body, sparking a vital realization in Diljuk about how the relic functions. Locking eyes with the chief, Diljuk promises to save him so he can live peacefully with Coral, urging him to place his trust in him. Hearing those words, the chieftain places his faith in Diljuk, causing the bracelet's magical grip to falter. Raising his sword to strike, Diljuk lunges forward, startling Dalton into believing the hero has chosen to sacrifice the hostage. Shrouded in a surging magical aura, Diljuk closes the distance on Dalton with his empowered blade. Remembering Diljak's promise of a peaceful life with Coral, the chieftain puts full faith in the hero and prepares to act. Unleashing his latent beast power, the chief expands his arm into a massive claw, shattering the confining bracelet into pieces under the strain. Shifting into a massive beast, the chief bolts out of Dalton's grasp before the stunned villain realizes what happened. Dalton screams in fury, demanding to know how Diljuk engineered the escape. A confident smirk spreads across Diljak's face in response. Diljuk lunges to strike Dalton as the freed chief dashes back to his kin. Reaching his people, the chief collapses to the ground from exhaustion, causing the frantic demi-humans to crowd around him. Returning to human form, the chief catches his breath as his kin tend to him, one of them looking at Diljuk in disbelief over how the bracelet shattered. Smirking, Dalton admits he never expected the chief to break his mental control. Realizing his skill has been exposed, Dalton hefts his weapon to fight once more. Noticing Dalton shielding his ring, Diljuk recognizes the artifact as his true weakness. Through that ring, Dalton channels his domination skill to enslave everyone wearing a bracelet, reinforcing his tyrannical grip over their minds. Severing the mental connection weakens the bracelets. Yet Diljuk knows he cannot stop to convince every single captive mid-battle. Resolving to shatter Dalton's ring, Diljuk raises his blade for the decisive blow. Hoisting the morning star from the earth, Dalton laughs and warns that defeating him will not be so easy. He heaves the spiked iron ball overhead and unleashes a ferocious swing. Controlling an army of captives proves Dalton commands immense reserves of magic. Recognizing Daltrin as a far deadlier threat than anticipated, Diljuk braces for combat as the warlord sneers that the true slaughter of Diljuk Rebello is only just beginning. Guilt-ridden and trembling under magical enslavement, the captured demi-humans march toward Tenma village, shocking Carrot Sandy with their sheer overwhelming numbers. Beside Coral, Cindy Keen draws her alchemical tools and readies for war as Carrot Sandy surveys the advancing crowd, noting the terrifying size of the hostile horde. Across the borders of Tenma, the battle erupts as Balek parries an incoming strike with his heavy blade, scowling at how drastically the enemy outnumbers their squad. Cleaving through the front line, the Bear Tribe warrior deflects another assault, shouting that dark magic controls these thralls. Dodoria dodges a furious strike, groaning at the pain of subduing foes without killing them before knocking a warrior cold with a hasty apology. Devado closely inspects the metal band around an unconscious thrall, warning the defenders that these cursed magic bracelets must be smashed as the fighters lie asleep. Gazing across the battlefield, Balek sneers that such grotesque mind control reflects a truly twisted master. Alarmed by the endless waves of demi-humans, the bear warrior voices his dread, asking if Diljuk can truly survive out there on his own. Balek insists Diljuk can handle himself, and Dodoria swears to defend the village of Tenma, their lord entrusted to them, prompting the bear warrior to study his resolve. High in the mountains of Tenma, Cindy Keen triggers an alchemical transformation, snaring thralls with explosive root growth to earn swift praise from Carrot Sandy. Carrot Sandy warns that they cannot lower their guard, and Cindy Keen agrees as a fresh wave of demi-humans marches out of the deep woods. Coral rushes up with a frantic report that the arriving beastmen act bizarrely, prompting Cindy Keen to trace the dark magic pulsing from their bracelets. Cindy Keen realizes smashing the bracelets will free the demi-humans, but Carrot Sandy parries a vicious blow and warns that breaking hundreds one by one is impossible. Channeling her magic, Cindy Keen counters that destroying them individually is unnecessary since Diljuk is currently dueling the Master Caster. Buying time until Diljuk slays the summoner becomes their only priority, an assessment Carrot Sandy immediately endorses with a grim nod. Cindy Keen can only immobilize a fraction of the horde, and Carrot Sandy sighs that her hidden traps will fail to snare every target without more precious time. Coral steps between them, offering to hold the enemy vanguard alone so her companions can ready their decisive magic skills. Raising her heavy warhammer, Carrot Sandy thanks Coral, and promises not to falter, matched by Cindy Keen unleashing ancient alchemy beside her. Together, the defenders vow to stand their ground with everything they have until Diljuk secures final victory. Along the contested border, Daltrin sneers across the clearing, demanding to know if Diljuk will surrender. Daltrin swings his massive morning star to cleave whole trees in one blow, boasting Tenma will fall as Diljuk dodges the flail, stunned by its ridiculous reach. Vaulting high with magic, Diljuk prepares a descending plunge yet halts his blade just shy of the terrified, bound demi-human captives, hesitating to avoid slaughtering innocent hostages. Diljuk narrows his eyes with burning fury as a tactical plan forms in his mind. Daltrin taunts that endless evasion will never win the duel. But Diljuk stays quiet, timing his counter and raising his sword to strike the morning star from the brute's grip. Darting forward to close the distance, Diljuk is shoved back as Daltrin stomps hard onto his blade with a smug grin, leaving the young lord stunned and furious. Daltrin mocks Diljuk as pathetic and weak, kicking him back before whipping the heavy head of his morning star straight behind the boy. Leaping straight up to evade the crushing blow, Diljuk springs back onto open ground. Enraged by the young lord's restraint, Daltrin snaps, asking if Diljuk truly expects to win without bloodshed or if he lacks the stomach for total war. Determined to end the duel, Daltrin betrays a flicker of terror in his gaze. With a savage roar, Daltrin hurls the spiked iron head of his flail toward the bound demi-humans. Sprinting across the clearing, Diljuk shouts at Daltrin to keep his filthy hands off the captives, interposing his blade at breakneck speed. Diljuk shields the hostages and parries the flail, mocking Daltrin for relying on cheap, cowardly tricks, confidence returning. Diljuk concedes his solo martial technique looks modest, yet warns that his loyal allies stand ready to back him, leaving Daltrin bewildered. Daltrin reels his flail back, Diljuk triggers his ancient summoning, opening a status window where a max point gauge confirms his newest legendary power is ready. Beaming at the confirmation that his skill gauge is fully charged, Diljuk puts complete faith in the ancient strength at his command. Memories flash back to when the Bear Tribe warrior asked Diljuk if he truly intended to march out and face the enemy vanguard all by himself. Dodoria had stepped in to reassure the bear, reminding him that Diljuk could always summon Hakuryu to turn the tide, refusing to summon Hakuryu along the border. Diljuk faces puzzled questions from his comrades. Conserving mana remained vital for the tasks awaiting them after battle, which Diljuk cited as his reason for keeping Hakuryu in reserve, grasping that Diljuk truly planned to fight unassisted. Dodoria admitted that he shared the bear warrior's deep worry. Seeking to calm his allies, Diljuk displayed his status window and revealed his secret backup plan. The panel described his ability to summon ancient legends with 820 of 1000 points already filled, gathered as they crafted their defensive strategy, promising to rapidly charge the gauge in battle and call forth a new spirit. Diljuk leaves Dodoria wondering which ancient warrior will actually appear. Looking toward the sky, Diljuk had one specific champion in mind, recalling the secret advice Hakuryu gave him. Hakuryu had promised that an ancient martial spirit would answer the call the instant it caught the scent of glorious battle. Thrusting his palm forward, Diljuk commands the ancient warrior to traverse time, igniting a radiant aura as he casts ancient summoning. Roaring onto the battlefield, a crimson tiger spirit manifests in an explosion of mana. Ecstatic that his turn to slaughter has finally arrived. Springing forward on powerful hind legs, the crimson beast positions his massive body before Diljuk, glaring down Daltrin with predatory, bloodthirsty rage. Daltrin recoils in pure disbelief, his rage curdling into terror as defeat looms. Opening his status window, Diljuk inspects the attributes and class grade of the summoned beast. The interface names the spirit as the Furious King of Beasts at level 1 of 5, granting Diljuk the terrifying might of the mythical red tiger, pointing straight at Daltron. The mythical beast asks his bro if that wretch needs a beating, drawing a warm grin and an apology from Diljuk for the trouble, eager to crush their foe. The tiger invites Diljuk onto his back, and the young lord vaults up. Daltron barks that Diljuk called another beast and heaves his weapon, but his swing fails to deter the charging tiger. Gripping the tiger's crimson fur, Diljuk marvels at its blinding speed as Daltron swings his flail, confident they cannot outrun the strike. Clamping the flail chain in his jaws, the tiger smashes the spiked morning star into the earth to shatter the iron under his weight, spitting out the scrap and warning Daltron to yield. With a mighty leap, the tiger launches Diljuk high into the air, perfectly priming him for an aerial strike. Soaring above with mana blazing along his blade, Diljuk declares the hour of reckoning against Daltron and activates the Rebello style. Unleashing the Rebello style, Diljuk tears a blood-curdling shriek from Daltron. Coughing blood, Daltron collapses unconscious before the young lord, who refuses to let the warlord die and channels ancient alchemy to stabilize his wounds. Enveloping Daltron's torso, alchemical roots wrap tightly around his wounds, sealing the bleeding instantly. The tiger marvels at Diljuk's mercy, but the young lord explains Daltron must face formal justice and moves to crush the mind control ring. Creeping roots crush the magic gem inside Daltron's ring, leaving the trembling commander clutching his fist and wailing in despair over his ruined ambition. Daltron snarls that the heir of eternal darkness will awaken through Diljuk's meddling, leaving the young lord baffled by the prophecy. The red tiger dismisses the villain's babble as empty garbage, urging Diljuk to focus on the immediate matters at hand. Looking up toward the horizon, Diljuk wonders how his allies are faring as the focus shifts back to the battle in Tenma. Midway through combat, Cindy Keen senses an unexpected shift and calls on her comrades to hold their attacks, gaining control of their limbs. As the curse shatters, the liberated demi-humans cheer and celebrate their reclaimed freedom. Carrot Sandy turns to Cindy Keen with a relieved smile, realizing Diljuk has triumphed over the enemy commander. Cindy Keen praises Diljuk as a worthy leader chosen by the skill, knowing the ancient summon answers only true royalty. Holding her arms over her chest, Cindy Keen remembers the day they became spirits to endure 4,000 years of waiting. Having waited 4 millennia for a worthy master, Cindy Keen cherishes how Diljuk restored her to life and brought joy back to crafting. Cindy Keen had long faded into ancient obscurity and the forgotten shadows of time. Even so, she knows Diljuk possesses the true majesty of a king needed to restore Tenma to legendary greatness. Devoting her full strength to Diljuk's vision, Cindy Keen steps forward to untie the rescued demi-humans. Carrot Sandy detects a strange rustling in the woods and warns Cindy Keen just as a familiar voice calls out from the forest shadows.